MasterSword Music.
TJ the Gamer. Yeah, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, yeah, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus got one of the best cast that you have ever seen. You really missing out if you haven't heard that this show here to stay. So go pass the word, old school or new school. Check us out on YouTube. It don't matter what you like, we got something for you. Just one more thing to say before I start to close. Shout out to my homies at the Chronoz Show. The Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh.
Thunder, 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 Thundercats! Ho!
When you decide to come out to this type of function, this type of experience, this type of gathering, Marvel phenomenon, there is only one event to attend, the MidWest Gaming Classic, where you and the games are one. Gaming Classic. It's not just child's play.
That last part gets me. He's like turning around like he's about to fight someone, or it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, that is based on a Super Nintendo commercial that Paul Rudd shot, like in 1992 or something like that. That was just as ridiculous, and so it's actually a parody commercial of that. And it's funny because we've always tried to do like little in jokes with our commercials, and that's one that I always wonder if people really get, like, you know, the stuff, and yet it's still funny even if you don't.
Yeah, I definitely love that commercial. It's really cool, really cool. Well, let's start off the show, and this is a Chronoz Show, and you guys can tell with the intro, you see a little Chrono Trigger in there, and kind of where it comes from, Chronoz, and this is episode 98. So I started the podcast once the pandemic had started. I was just gaming it, and I decided to just turn it into a podcast. So here we are, 98 episode, and we have let's see if I pronounced it right. So is it Dan Lucen?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
okay,
hi.
And you are co-founder of the MidWest Gaming Classic.
Yeah,
so
we've been at this now 21 years at this year's show, which is crazy. There was technically 1 year that we missed one. So I guess this is the 20th show. But yeah, it's been since 2001. So crazy.
I don't understand how me as a gamer since I was 5. And then my very first gaming convention was last November, ever. And I remember I'm like, where the heck have I been? What the heck was I doing? And I run to this Disneyland place where, you know, it comes around, and it's just I don't get it. I think it was mid 2002. I had to sell. It was either well, I was told it's me or the video games. So I had everything at that point. So everything was sold. My passion was lost. I regained it back. It came back 2017 when I just started playing again, and everything slam dunked on me, and I started collecting just things I wanted and going back into it. But anyways, going back to, you know, this year was like, I'll talk about my experience, but first I want to know, how did this start from the beginning? Where did this become to from its first show? Like, who thought it up? And like, just tell me about it. Like, how did it start?
Yeah, absolutely. So the people who I co-founded the show with, we were all big Atari Jaguar fans, believe it or not. And at the time, the Jaguar has never been a very popular console, but the Jaguar was it was like the first console that came out and then died after the internet came out. And the fact is that Atari had all these big plans for it, and it created a really interesting thing where online we had a bunch of people that were like, "Oh, let's get together and talk about this." And people were discovering games that hadn't been released, and people were finding out facts about it that weren't known, and we were sharing it online. And so, like, people were figuring out it was like the first real fan community it was the first fan community that I took part in, and it was a really exciting community because even though there was like 200 of us that were online, we would regularly talk, and like it felt kind of like, oh man, it's a great fighting game, Ultra Vortex, and nobody else knows who Ultra Vortex is, but we had our little community. And so from that community in 1990, I always forget what the first year was. I think it was 1997. They decided that they wanted to host an event just for people to come and play Jaguar games, and they called it JagFest. And they had about 30 or 40 people come to the first year show. And then it was decided that JagFest was going to rotate from location to location. And in 1999, it went to Rochester, Minnesota. And in Rochester, Minnesota, I went with a couple of friends, and it was fun. There was like maybe 60 people at that one, maybe 70, somewhere around there. It wasn't huge, but it was like we were able to go, and this thing that we nerded out on online about, that we were just like, oh man, you know what? It's a great game, Tempest 2000. It's not a great game, Breakout 2000. And then you could get together and you actually have conversations with people that knew what you were talking about instead of looking at you like, what's a Jaguar? And we after that were like, man, that was really fun. We should offer to host one. So in 2000, in 2001, we said to the Jaguar community, hey, we'd like to throw Milwaukee in the ring as a place that we could host this show. And basically no one else stepped up, so it went to us by default. And we did everything we could to make the show into a really unique community gathering. And we had such a blast. We had 100 people come, but that included, it was like 103 actually, but that included, we had people flying from Japan for it. We had people from all around the country come to it. And it was all of these people that we knew online. And so that was just, it was honestly kind of crazy. And we had so much fun. We said, we definitely want to do this again. And JagFest, like I said, it moved location to location. And because it moved location to location, we were like, well, we don't want to like keep doing JagFest because it should go somewhere else. So let's come up with a different show. And so we basically did the same concept, but expanded it to all type of gaming. And the first 2 years of the show was just known as the Midwest Classic, which actually the internet celebrity now, Ben Heck, named before he was, as he's called it, internet famous. And so Ben won a competition to name our show, and the Midwest Classic was born. We did that for 2 years. And basically the idea was we wanted to have people come in and just share their love of gaming. In 2004, we got to go, in 2003, we were in a place where we had expected a lot more people to show up than they did. And so we said, okay, next year we either need to go big or go home. And so we spent a lot of time and a ton of effort in 2004 show. And it was better, but it still didn't, we lost a lot of money. Without going into tons of details, the hotel at the time did not basically tell us what they were going to charge us for properly. And so after the show, we lost thousands of dollars again for the second year in a row. And at that point, we threw up our hands and we said, this is dumb. We're done with this. And we tried walking away. But about a year later, around the time of the show, we had all these people come to us and they were like, hey, so what is it that you like, why haven't you announced the show yet? And we were like, well, we also sell video games online at goatstore.com. And at the time, that was by far the bigger side of the business. And so we were like, okay, we don't want to tell these people like, hey, the show sucked and we lost a ton of money. because then they might not buy video games from us, and we can tell that some of these people buy video games from us. So let's come up with a list of things that they can do, because they were all like, what can we do to help bring it back? And so we said, let's come up with a list of things that's impossible and say, hey, here you go. And that way we don't have to run the show, but they'll all be happy that they had something to try. And so we said to them, okay, we need a space that's twice as big but half the cost. And we need someone that will just sit at tickets all day and run tickets for us. And we were like, no one's going to do that, because if they love the show, the last thing that they're going to want to do is sit at tickets all day. And we need someone that will go drive around town and drop off flyers at these different locations and then check to make sure that they're full. And like all these things that we were like, no one is going to sign up for this. And sent that email off. And a couple days later, what we found out happened, because we had sent it with everybody just on a CC list. So it was like 10, 12 people that had asked. Sent that email off and got an email back like 3 or 4 days later. They took us off the list and they divided up tasks. And so one of them said, I'm going to look for a location. One of them said, we're going to make a flyer and figure out where we can distribute it. One of them said, we're going to work on ticketing and get all that stuff done. And like a week later, all right, here's the location. The Olympia and Economy Walk will be twice as much space for or 4 times as much space for half the cost. What? We'll be at ticketing all day. Okay.
Sure.
Not just are we going to drop off flyers, but here's 3 designs that we've already made for your approval. What?
Alrighty.
And so honestly, we were like, oh crap, we didn't want to do this. And so we were like, we told everybody, all right, here's the deal. We'll do it again. But the first year that it loses money, we're done. Because again, at this point, we had lost, I mean, the GOAT store was making like $5,000 a year. And at this point, we had lost $10,000. So over 2 years, which was 100% of the effort of the GOAT store for the entire year. And it was like, what are we doing? And we were like, well, we'll try this one more time. And then we'll just kind of throw our hands up and say, all right, we did it. And then we can really be done with it. And we held the show, and we went on a streak where like for 6 or 7 years in a row, we never made more than $200, but we never lost money. And what's insane is that all of the people that came to us still volunteer with the show to this day.
Wow.
The person, the woman who did tickets for us, she brought in her boyfriend to help with tickets. They are married. They now do different volunteer work at the show. The people who did the flyers for us have helped us with flyers and with other stuff every single year since then. The guy who found us the space is one of the people who runs the museum. Like all of these people ended up staying with the show. And basically what we did is that we just said, all right, so what the problem that we had with the early shows was we were doing too much. We were trying to set up everything off of our backs. And at this point, I don't really bring in content myself. What I do is I tell really cool people like, hey, you have really cool stuff. What do you want to do at the show? And then they come and they bring in stuff, and we just enable them to set that up and to bring their communities in. And it's like, it basically went back to the original concept of getting online communities together to demonstrate what they love about gaming. And so that's exactly what it kind of has grown from it. And it's been outstanding. It's been one hell of a ride.
Yeah, it seems like it just how, I mean, me walking in after all these years, just, came back to my gaming, love and things like that. And just when I went in April, I remember being there. I was there Friday, it was just more of a setup too. I was able to see things before they officially opened up, but just, I was there with my son, and we're both big gamers. And it's just, it was, again, I was saying, it felt like I was in Disney World of gaming. It was just a whole new level for me. I'm like, fuck, man, this is so amazing. Like right now, I still think about it now. It's just, I saw, all these games, things, and it was just as big as it was. And I hear that it's going to be even bigger in April. Yeah. It freaking drives me nuts. It's like, dude, like for real. I did like seeing all the old computers, things like that. Looking at the pinballs, the arcades, the tabletop. All the stuff that even things like I might be interested in learning next time, tabletop RPG, might check that out this coming time and whatever else. But I want to sit down, and it was this last time was more like I did a lot of recording, checking around. I did play some, but this time I'm definitely going to record, but I want to spend more time gaming it, checking it out. I met Daniel Pesina. You guys had the Mortal Kombat crew up there.
Yep.
I had them before on the podcast. You saw them. You probably saw them on a little clip, and
Yep.
but it's just kind of getting to know people and some of the gamers I've never met through Twitter. A lot of my cool friends, like I even picked up on John Riggs at the airport, and I hear that Metal Jesus is coming. I'm like, wow, this is just like freaking cool. It's just all these special guests that you have coming, and just how expanded everything's become, just like you said, over the years. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of
well, and
Go ahead.
I'll tell you that I don't think that it's a weird thing that you didn't necessarily discover it right away, because there's a, I don't know what the right word is for it, but there's like an expectation, I think, that a gaming convention would be a few hardcore nerds that are like in their basement, like keeping to themselves and being really like awkward about things. And that's not what our show is about. And that's not to say that, there aren't shows like that. I just have never been to one, but it's generally like people get together and they want to show off what they love. And so you get this huge expansive like type of stuff from that. And the first time you go, it's hard to know what to expect. And it's actually one of the things that we've been talking about a lot, because I went to C2E2 for the first time in December. And I went actually because one of the authors who comes to our show said to me, hey, you guys have some of my books and I'm doing a speech and I don't have access to my books and it's quickly. Do you want to bring some down? I'll hook you up with a ticket and then I'll sell them for you. And I said, sure. And so I came down and I was only there for like an hour, but I was on the show floor free for 30 minutes. I was on the show floor for probably an hour and a half, but the first hour was just dropping off the books and getting them to the right spot. So I literally like did a run through the stuff. And what I discovered, and this is not throwing shade at all on any other convention, but what I discovered about C2E2 is that their like content of what you could actually do was like an eighth of what ours are. Now, that's not to say that C2E2 isn't a great show. I couldn't stay. I didn't leave because I was like, oh God, I hate this. I left because I had to get home that night. And there was a terrible, like, half snowstorm, half rainstorm going on. So I knew it would take forever to get out of Chicago, and it did. But I was like, hey, it's different. And if we can just tell people like, hey, look at how much content we have at our show, I think that they'll really start to get it. And it's one of the things where a few years ago, one of the things that really kind of made me feel like our show has a really interesting background to it is I posted a photo, because the first location we were ever in for both JAGFest and the first Midwest Classic, and we've called JAGFest, by the way, Atari Jaguar Festival, because JAGFest sounds a little weird. But the first 2 years we were in the Pieper Power Center, which is in the basement of the Boy Scout Service Center in Milwaukee. And we were there because my dad worked for the Boy Scouts. And so he was able to basically let us take over the basement hall with the understanding of if we made money, we would donate that money to the Boy Scouts. So cool, really easy way to get a location, basically. Yeah. And so I went to the Scout office because my older son is in Scouts. And we were getting like a T-shirt or a Scout shirt for him or something. And I took a picture of the stairs going down, and I posted it on our Facebook, and I just said, who remembers this entryway to our show? And what was crazy is that, like I said, we had, I think it was 103 or 106 people that first year. I had more than 10 people say, yep, I remember being there for that first show. And I've been to every one since. And it was just like, whoa, this is mind blowing that, not just have they stuck with us, but they're still that engaged with what we do, that when I post this, I actually think it was probably closer to 15 people that were like, yes, I was there. And it was just like, wow, that's incredible. And so people, once they find it, generally fall in love with it, and they get more involved, and they reach out for interviews or whatever. And then we generally try to keep them engaged and happy. And we also are very big on just letting people do what they think is best for the show. We trust them. So like if someone comes to me and is like, hey, I've got an idea, what do you think? I'm always like, yeah, let's do it. And we kind of jokingly refer to ourselves as enablers. Although that's kind of the truth, is that we just enable people to do cool things at the show. And because of that, one of the weird things about the Midwest Gaming Classic is that we have about 3/4 of our show floor is dedicated to content. Whereas like C2E2, and again, not throwing shade at them at all. They, quite frankly, are way bigger than us and do one hell of a great job for what they do. But they probably had maybe 10% of their show floor was content. And so it's just this weird like inversion of how things are done. And it's a very collaborative environment because of that.
Yeah, it's just like with my experience, I know I'm like I'm probably let's say from the Wisconsin Center 45 minutes from there. I'm here in Illinois, but just like I know there's other things going on in Chicago or so, but it's just I know where I found myself, and I'm the kind of person. This is where I want to stick to, and this is where I want to be at. Like April, I'm already going. I already know it's for a fact. But this time, what I want to do, so because I came all 3 days last time, but my problem was I was driving back each day. And it's this time I want to be prepared and stay at a hotel right across the street. You know how awesome is that going to be? I'm just walking back across, go back. It's like a little vacation to myself. Bring my son and the lady with me, and just kind of enjoy that too. And but yeah, I'm planning it how I want to do it and come over. But being said about donations, I want to. If you guys did you guys have it in television last time at all playing? I don't remember seeing one.
We generally in the museum, and I don't always know. Let me put it this way. I'm all but positive that we would have had someone bring one for the museum, but it wasn't brought by us specifically. We've actually just started building our own content museum, or our content. Let me try. Sorry, my words are my. Okay, let me try all of that again because I don't know what is happening.
Take your time.
We have just started building a console library for the show. The long story short is that our museum, which has featured in the past up to 150 consoles at a time, has been mostly brought by volunteers. And don't get me wrong, that's wonderful. But one of the things that we've definitely seen is that the volunteers will literally bring like a car that is like, they have to sit and like when they're loading up, they have to like literally Tetris in stuff, and they're like driving back with like consoles on their laps even. And it's like, okay, I love everything that you're doing. Let's bring in some of the consoles ourselves. And so we have taken and we've gotten so far about 30 consoles that are officially show consoles now. I actually just mentioned this to you right before we started. I was super excited this week because we ordered 8-bucket rolling carts that we are using for storing our consoles in. And I ordered 3 of them. And the guy called me today and said, don't worry, we're giving you a refund for shipping. And I was very excited because this is the type of stuff that excites me right now. But yeah, so we don't have one yet for that. But yeah, if you're looking for a great home for it, or if anybody else is looking for a home for something that would be shown every year, we'd love to host it.
Yeah, definitely. It's I really thought about it. I do, and I'll communicate with you, later on in private, just because I bought it off someone who had it in their garage for a while. I ended up cleaning it over a year ago, making it work. Just kind of Astro Smash, some of the popular hits from there,
Yep.
And I just think that people can enjoy it if you guys are able to, it's like I said, I cleaned it nicely and it does work. So It's just kind of, and there's a way to make it, sometimes, you got to play with it at, like anything that old, from 1979, it's just, again, I think it would be the best place to be. So I definitely want to donate that because, and I definitely enjoy my old systems. It's just that again, I'm definitely a fan of television, and I look at, I had like, Tommy Tellerico, Phil Adams, on my show. We talked about the Amico. That's a whole other thing for another time. I guess it's just kind of, whenever they're ready for that. But in the meantime, back to their old traditional stuff, it's like, it's great. I did like it, but I'll let you know when I can, if you guys need it near the show or before then,
we can absolutely work something out. And I'll tell you that one of the things that's interesting about a lot of the old games is that so I in my mythical spare time have helped different arcades in town and repaired pinball machines for them. And one of the things that's interesting is that there's this real fascination with the super old games, but there's less and less people who are like super wanting to play those old games as much as they just want like play them in depth as much as they want to play them a little bit. So like as a perfect for instance, we actually had donated to the show a couple of years ago a game. I don't remember who made it, but it's a game called Hockey, It's a Pong game from 1972. It's an arcade game, and it's amazing. It's old school. I was told that it was in a dentist office for the longest time, and it's fine. But when we got it, I mean, I think it's a great game. I think it's a really cool piece, and I hope that we get to bring it to the show often. But what I will also tell you is that after we got it, I was like, oh my God, this thing is so old, and they made so few of these. This has to be worth a bunch of money. And the people that I've talked to have been like, man, it's probably worth about $300 or $400. And these are people who really know arcade games. And I was like, why? And they were like, because it's from the 70s, and so there's really not anything to the game. And like, that's very true with some of the very early stuff. And again, this is not me. My first system was a 2600. I adore some of the 2600 games. Pitfall 2 was my jam. I was just talking with actually someone today about how I wish that I could find the rights to one particular 2600 game. So like, I totally appreciate them. I still have, they're actually just in the other room behind me. I have a, like, I don't even know what it's supposed to be. It's like a tool chest, but not. It's like a weird 70s chest that I keep all my 2600 games in. And I still have all the games that I had as a kid. And how I got into collecting was my dad, shortly after I was born, my dad bought a 2600 on clearance because he wanted to play Space Invaders. And then when I was like 5 or 6 and really was like, you know, at school and like, oh my God, people are talking about the Nintendo and I should get one. And I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, let's get a Nintendo. And my dad was like, why? It's the exact same thing as a 2600 that we own. And I was like, no, it's not. But I don't think that I'm going to change his mind. And so what actually ended up working out with that was really interesting is my dad was like, all right, so here's the deal. I'm going to take you to rummage sales. And, you know, the 2600 and the Nintendo are basically the same, except that you can find used 2600 games at rummage sales for like $1. And I was like, oh. And so I would go with my dad. My dad loved rummage sales. He was a huge Star Wars collector. And like they're not boxed, but he has all of the old Star Wars toys. And so he would go looking for Star Wars toys, and I would tag along and rummage through boxes of 2600 games. And so I have like 50 2600 games probably from back then, and I love them. And then that always left me a little bit behind, but it did teach me that, like, when I got my Nintendo, it was like, oh, sweet, look at this. There's a whole bunch of games that I can buy now for $5 because they're 4 or 5 years old, and some of them are really good. And so I kind of learned to appreciate gaming like that. And between the Star Wars figures and the 2600 games, I learned how to be a collector. And so a little bit of all of that. And yeah, it's either served me really well or really poorly, depending on how you look at my crazy basement and a few other buildings that are full of junk. So
as long as you love what you're doing, you know, that's all that matters. You know, what you love playing and, you know, just having fun. You know, that's how I see it when now I'm starting to venture out again and look for, I wish I can, maybe the summertime might find me some sales too out, you know, see if I get lucky, or that's the whole beauty about looking for these collections again, just only looking for exactly what I want. Like I was mentioning.
And the really interesting thing that I just feel like I should add to that is that for me, the thing that I always loved about gaming was the social aspect to it. So like I worked at a camp, and when I worked at the camp, we played D&D at the camp. I worked at, or we also played N64 games where 4 of us would go sit around. It was my N64. I brought it. We'd sit around and play GoldenEye until like 2 in the morning when we had to all wake up at 7 a.m. the next morning for, to go walk to breakfast. Throughout high school, I would have nights where my friends would come over. I worked for Chuck E. Cheese was my first job, and we had an air hockey league and a Sega Super GT arcade racing league that we all participated in. And so like it was always this kind of social aspect to a lot of the different things that I did. And so I started playing Magic also in like 93. And that was like a big way that I would go out and like meet new people and chat with them and stuff like that. And so all of these things were like ways to be social. And so the show kind of sprung out of that, because the way that I look at it now too is like I've played basically all the things that are featured at the show. Not necessarily all the games, but like I've played tabletop games, I've played tabletop RPG, I've played Magic, I've played pinball, I've played arcade games, I've played video games, I've played computers, I've played all that stuff. But it's really about the like games are almost secondary to the meeting and the interacting with the people and hearing the stories about like, how did you get into this and what's the games that you remember and stuff like that. And that's really where the magic comes from, I think.
Yeah, yeah, just it's just all the passion that we have inside, and how like I feel like mine was hidden for these years. And I think for me, what started me was the Nintendo Switch. When I started seeing that, I got a little nutty about it, and everything came back again, and I started going back to retro gaming. And retro gaming to me, especially with the show, seeing the show, is that it feels like it's retro's becoming more of making a major comeback. Even with all the new stuff out there, new generation, I feel like I have a PS5 right here. I have my Switch. I got my Super, but I'm playing more my Super or my 64 that I got. I'm playing, or if I hook up my Switch, I'm playing the classic games on there. It just seems like retro gaming is just, making a tremendous comeback for what I believe. Do you think that's true in a way, or?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's a couple things going on. I think that the first is that games really did have a major change, I feel, with the Dreamcast being the last of the previous generation, or the first generation of gameplay style, if you will. The Dreamcast was the last console that had major arcade games that were put on it that people were like, oh my God, you need to go buy a Dreamcast, because like Crazy Taxi. Crazy Taxi came out for the Xbox, but it was not like Microsoft was like, "Ooh, this is a big tent pole. Oh my God, everybody, we have Crazy Taxi 3." It came out and they were like, "Yeah, we got Crazy Taxi 3." And like for the Xbox, it's like Halo. It's the story-driven games. And again, for Dreamcast, it was Marvel vs. Capcom, and it was Hydro Thunder, and it was like a lot of the arcade-style games that you could pick up and play. And like, you could come over to my house right now and we could walk downstairs, grab a game for the Dreamcast that like I haven't played in a while, and we would be equal on it. I busted out, no kidding, I busted out my older son turned 12 and he wanted to have a gaming birthday. And so I was like, I got a lot of old stuff. You cool with that? And he was like, yeah. So I put Soul Calibur in the Dreamcast, and the kids were like, this is amazing. And like, they make Soul Calibur still, but the way that they make Soul Calibur now is that it's so much more like, oh, there's all this depth to it and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, if I'm going to pay $60 for a game, I want there to be all that depth to it. But you can just pick up and play this. And like, they did a tournament on Soul Calibur, and like, none of the kids were like outstanding at it. It was also funny. I had 12-year-olds do a tournament on Mortal Kombat 2. And
really?
Like, that's a game that when I was a kid was like, oh my God, you're going to go to HE double hockey sticks for playing Mortal Kombat. And now it was like, I did a Mortal Kombat 2 thing, and like all the parents were like, oh, that's awesome. And so the times have changed, but I think that pick up and play part of it, like I said, it really got lost after the Dreamcast. And it's not to say that nothing else came out with that, but just that wasn't the thing that the console was being sold on. So much of what Sega sold the Dreamcast on, and literally all the consoles before that, were, hey, take the arcade home. Like the N64, the first big N64 game was Cruisin' USA in the arcades that said, hey, we're playing this on an Ultra 64, the new console that you should buy. It literally said that on the game when you sat down. And it wasn't actually an Ultra 64, but guess what? That game was a huge game when the N64 came out, of like, yeah, look, you can play Cruisin' USA on your N64. And again, Cruisin' USA is a perfect example of a game that it's fun, but it does not have depth. And I'm friends with the guy that made it, and I've said that, is that I really like it, but it just doesn't have depth. The new one is better because it has the depth that it's missing. But Cruisin' Exotica, I'm not Cruisin' Exotica, Cruisin' whatever it is now, that they just came out with, the issue is that it's not like Nintendo is going, oh my God, the best game for the Switch is Cruisin'. It's Cruisin' Blast. That's what it is. Cruisin' Blast is outstanding and honestly should get more love than it does, but it's not that thing. And so suddenly, I think that a lot of people are reflecting on, man, you know what I used to have a lot of fun doing is when I could just pick up a game and play it and have fun with it for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes at a time. And like, I love a lot of the story-driven games. I've been playing through Last of Us for like the last 3 months because I'm just slow at playing actual games because I don't have time.
To The Last of Us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm finally playing through The Last of Us. And It's great. I love it. But like, I've been stuck where I'm at for like the last 2 months because I'm like, to move on to the next section, I need to sit down for like 2 hours so I can really enjoy the story and get immersed in it. And I'm like, I don't have 2 hours. So like if I'm going to play something, it's much more likely that I go down in the basement and play a pinball machine. Or lately I've been playing, I have a Maximum Force light gun game that I play in the basement like very regularly. And it's that pick up and play that retro has that modern doesn't have. And that, again, that's not to say that modern's not doing well. Modern's doing the best that it's ever done. But I think that a lot of people that are, getting older like us are going, oh man, I miss that feeling that I could just like walk up and like the arcade experience. I don't know if you had this, but man, I remember walking in the arcades and being like, oh man, look at that new game. Like I'm going to put my quarter here, which signifies that I get to play next. And like, you'd have to play with people that you didn't know. And it's a social aspect that's kind of changed, and arcades are coming back. I mean, there's some places in town that are suddenly doing stuff. I've helped repair pinball machines for a couple places in town, and 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, arcades were dying, and they were like, oh, these will never come back. 10 years ago, everybody was like, the industry is dead. Stern Pinball almost went out of business. Now, Stern Pinball has a backlog of more than a year, I believe, or something crazy like that. It might not be that long, but it's like if you order a game from Stern Pinball today, I'm not even positive that you can get it in 2022. And so, like, it's definitely gone where everybody is like, oh, yeah, I like this stuff, and I want to remember it. And so that's outstanding, honestly.
That's great. Just how everything's or what we love is just what we put our heart into. What you guys are doing, and what you guys brought to us, here in the local area, and what other people do in other areas too. But for the MGC, it's just kind of an inspirational look at what people bring for others to come together. We all come, we all game it together. We all see what others have, whether it's the donations or even if you're meet and greet. I had met Brian. Was it Brian Thompson?
Yeah,
he had signed. I'm sorry, I can see it. Signed the bottom of top of my hat.
Awesome.
It was just kind of like I don't know if I ruined my hat, but I had all these signatures on there. I can't remember half these names, but I got like Johnny Cage on there. John Vespercina, John Riggs. I got to get Metal Jesus on there, and just kind of, I can't wait to go back again and do it again. And my son, my 3-year-old is going to have to grow into it once he give him time. He's too young right now, but he'll eventually venture into the game stage.
Oh, no, for sure. And I'll tell you, it's fascinating because my older son, I hope he's asleep, because if he hears me, he'll barge in and be like, that's not true. But my older son doesn't really care about the arcade games or pinball machines or anything like that. We've had some of that in the house because the show owns it, and so it needs to be somewhere. And if it's not set up and playable, I don't know when it breaks. And so I would just be taking junk to the show. So they're set up and playable in the basement. And like I rarely get to play, and he almost never, like he'll be in the basement, I'll have stuff on and be like, meh, I'm going to go to my room and watch a video or whatever. And so like his games like Fortnite and stuff like that. And that's fine, whatever. Let him do whatever he wants to do. But then my younger one, his name's Elias. I think this is amazing. At the show this last year, Elias was like, hey, he was like, my wife said, because obviously, perhaps not obviously, I don't get to hang out with my family really at the show because I have to run around and run the show, which is fine. That's what we expect. My wife runs social media for the most part for us, so you can find my kids in tons of pictures for this show because of that. But so my younger kid, and both of my kids were told by my wife, you can pick one main thing to get at the show. And she said, as long as it's not a crazy price, I will, you show it to me and you tell me why you want it, and I will get you one main thing at the show. And I don't remember what my older son picked, but my younger son got super into a new Nintendo game that was made called Doodle World. And yeah, and he loved it. And it was also part of our VIG badge. So everybody who was a VIG got a copy. And I have like an extra 10 copies somewhere around because we made just a few of them that were extra. And I thought that it was amusing, to say the least, that my son had bought a copy at full cost while he was there. And it was funny because I texted the developer afterwards and was just like, "You're not going to believe this. My son's choice of a game at the show was Doodle World." And he was like, "Oh my God, you should have told me. I wouldn't have sold him a copy." I was like, "No, it's great." And like I told my son, and he was like, "Wait, so I got the rarer version of the game?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "For my birthday, can I get the other version?" I was like, "Yeah." So my older son has started, or my younger son has a Nintendo collection that now has like 3 games in it, and we just played Kaze for the Switch, and that got him to be interested in playing Donkey Kong Country for the Switch. So he's been playing Donkey Kong Country lately and showing me how he's doing there, and I'm just like, this is awesome. So yeah, it's great, and it's fascinating to see what they gravitate to. My younger son likes Minecraft, and then really nothing else until the NES came along, and now he's just like fascinated by different games for it.
That's cool. Give me 1 second. Hold on, I wanted to see. Yes, when I first signed up, I was, I did got, how do you say
Yeah, there it is.
I had linear. I got the, what is it? The VI? How do you call it? The VIG?
VIG, very important gamer.
Yeah, so I got my what do you call it?
Lanyard with
the lanyard.
Yeah, we call those the game badge.
The lanyard. See if I can pull it out real quick.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so handy, and that's honestly the best ticket in my opinion for anybody, because you get to do everything at the show and really see everything that's going on, and that's awesome.
So when I go to work,
Nice.
I have it on my Abbott badge, so I
Nice.
just kind of carry it with me everywhere. So it's definitely a great experience to have. My son got one. I got him the same thing. So we both had our stuff walking in. And on my channel, you'll see I have a ton of videos that kind of show us on our first day and then going forth. But yeah, that's a really awesome thing. We got T-shirts and things like that. So something I want to kind of redo again this year, and bring the person then to get them involved in, that part of the gaming thing. But I'm not sure if my 3-year-old's ready yet, but maybe next year. But either way, it's definitely good stuff. When you guys have these type of things where people really enjoy, like this game. I played a little bit at the show. But yeah, definitely a good experience that I've had altogether. The vibe of whether the vibe of retro gaming coming back, just playing some. I was more attracted to also looking at the how do I say, the pinball machines and the arcades. I have kept looking at, checking it all out. I like taking the pictures, looking at all the extra stuff.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I love the entire show. But for me, what fascinated me so much, like out of my mind, was the vendor hall. It just kind of threw me into like, damn, this is the perfect place to. And I found out I was searching for a long time, and I had some of the prices at other places like 7 Mile Fair. I didn't see what I wanted in those little stores there. I liked them; they're fine. But I finally found Mario 64, an original cartridge, and I found it $25. I was like, oh shit, this is what I want. And so this year or this time, I'm going to start searching for Twilight Princess for Zelda and see if I can grab that and look at other things. But the must-get games, like this one I got a while ago. But what can you tell me about this? You got a little love for this game?
Yeah, you held it up before we started going live, and I was like, oh my God. So when I got a Super Nintendo, so this is kind of funny because it has to do with my Jaguar thing. And actually, I can tell you about someone coming to the show with this story because I brought it up to them. So I remember, I had been a little Atari fan because of the 2600 for a while, and then I got a Nintendo. But I remember seeing in the magazines. So the Super Nintendo came out, and I still don't love Mario World. I'm that guy that Mario 3 is way better to me. So when I saw Mario World, I was like, I don't know that I need a Super Nintendo right now. And I was good with pushing it off. And I remember reading in the magazine, there was an article about the Atari Jaguar that was coming out. It was talking about how, oh man, this is going to be the console that is going to blow your mind. It's going to have graphics so good that they're movie-like, and you won't be able to tell if you're playing a movie or playing a game. And obviously none of that's true. the Jaguar, basically because Sega did such a good job telling people that the 16-bit Genesis was twice as powerful as the 8-bit NES, everybody believed, okay, well, the Jaguar will be 4 times more powerful than the Sega Genesis, but that's not really how bits work. And when that came out, I was like, I need to find one, but the stores that I went to didn't carry one. And not that I would have had money for one at the time anyway. But then when the Super Nintendo had Donkey Kong Country coming out, I saw Donkey Kong Country and was like, I don't need a Jaguar. And it's funny because this year for the show, we have Kevin Bayless and David Wise from the from Donkey Kong and from Rare coming to the show. So David,
wait, stop playing. Wait, for real? Hold on.
Yeah.
What are their names?
I
Kevin
see. Bayless and David Wise.
Killer Instinct too?
Yep. Yeah. They worked for Rare, and so they did their Kevin was the one that did a lot of the designs, and then David is the one that did the music. And I saw Donkey Kong Country, and so when I was talking with them about coming to the show, I literally said to them, by the way, I said, I'm not sure if I should thank you or say that I'm angry with you about Donkey Kong Country, because I said, once I saw it, I completely forgot about how I wanted a Jaguar. And I said, I know that that's something that Nintendo specifically said that they wanted to do with those games. And I said, just so you know, it worked really well on me. And I got a Super Nintendo and didn't think about the Jaguar for another like 5 years. And they laughed about that. But yeah, I got for Christmas a Super Nintendo with Donkey Kong Country. I got Indiana Jones's Greatest Adventures. I got Super Star Wars, and I got Buster Busts Loose. And of the games, and I'm kind of surprised by this, other than, okay, Donkey Kong Country was by far my favorite, but Buster Busts Loose was probably my second favorite. And I used to play that game like crazy. And I, not too long ago, busted back out the Super Nintendo and was like, oh, that's the game that I got to play. And so I was like immediately playing that. And it's a game that's far better than it gets credit for.
I want to get the original cartridge for Donkey Kong if I can find it somewhere, and maybe I'll get lucky in April, like I've one of my all-time favorites is this is my favorite game of all time, so I'll probably ask you yours. My favorite game of all time.
Awesome.
Do you have an ultimate favorite game, or do you have like within systems?
So I generally have 3. I'm bad at deciding, so I have generally 3 from each category. My 3 that I always go back to for video games are Super Mario Brothers 3 for the Nintendo, Tempest 2000 for the Atari Jaguar, and Earthbound for the Super Nintendo.
Oh shit! Earthbound is something that passed me on when I was always playing like Mario Bros. All Stars or Chrono Trigger. There's other games, but that one passed me. Earthbound, was it? It's one for the NES?
Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, okay, because those just came out on the Switch.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I'm like, okay, this is my chance to get what all this is all about. I think they had it. Didn't they have it on the Mini?
They had it on the Mini. They have it on the Wii U, and yeah, they have the first and the second one, and then there's a third one, but the third one's never officially came out for potentially a lot of different reasons. But yeah, I'll tell you my story with Earthbound was I was sick when let's see here, when was it? Whenever the game came out, so 92 or 93 or 94, whatever, probably 94 when the game came out. I was homesick from school one day, and so my dad rented a game for me, and so he grabbed Earthbound and brought it home, and I was like it's a game that I guarantee I would have never picked up had it not been for this exact set of circumstances. And so he gave it to me, and I wasn't huge into RPGs. I've become a lot more fond of them as I've gotten older. And like I played Dragon Warrior and stuff like that as a kid, but it was never like I want to go get Dragon Warrior 2. It was just like, this is fine, but like I like action games more. And so anyway, got Earthbound and started playing it because I was sick. So laying on the couch and okay. And fell in love. So much so that I was like, oh crap, I need to beat this because this is amazing. And so I stayed up until like 3 a.m. when my dad came in and yelled at me and took the game away and told me that he was returning it the next day because I'm going to make myself sick. And sure enough, I was sick the next day, but he returned it because he was like, you weren't supposed to be up until 3 a.m. playing this game when you're sick. And so he returned it, and I was like, oh God, I have to get back to it. Was at a grocery store. And I was like, I have to get back to that grocery store to rent that game again. Like, I need to get my save off of it. And I finally got back to the grocery store and rented the game. And of course, my save was gone. And it was like a few weeks later. So duh, my save was gone. But what was really amazing, I worked at a camp from around 97 to 2001. And working at the camp, we would go to town on the weekends. And there was Family Video, which the last Family Video that I know of just closed a few years ago. It was actually really close to me here in Milwaukee. And we went into town, and we were like, oh, well, let's go there, because we would rent videos for the week that we would watch then after we were done with camp. And so we went in, and I was like, oh my God, it's a copy of Earthbound. It was $5.95. And I picked it up, and in its big box, I picked it up and I bought it. And I still have that exact copy to this day. And the label on it's ripped. And we've had some back when we started Goat Store in like the year 2000, Earthbound was not even a sought after game, really. We bought copies that were mint for $9 and then would resell them for 20. And we were like, oh man, we are making bank by selling this thing for 20. And man, if I would have saved like the 10 copies that I sold like that, I could have put my kids through college. But I mean, I wish I had, kind of, but you know, at the time no one had any idea that it would explode, but I just absolutely adored it. And so, yeah, I have actually here, let me see if I can do this. I lately have been collecting, so yeah, I actually put this up the other day. These are little Mr. Saturns.
Oh,
from the game. Yeah. So these are about a foot tall, actually. And I ended up getting one, and it was missing one of the whiskers. So, like a goofball, I was like, okay, well, I need to get a second so that I can have them both. And yeah, here's my almost full Earthbound collection. So they've made all these little figures that were in like claw games, and they're way more expensive than they should be. But yeah, so that right there is the original copy of Earthbound that I got, the full big box for it. And like, you can see the huge rip on the top of my game, and I don't care because that's my game. And I actually have the first game and the Japanese import, and even there it is. This is a Game Boy Advance micro of the third game. And yeah, I love the series and have since before everybody else discovered it and realized that it was as awesome as it is.
So how much does it go for now, Earthbound? If someone found
the last time that I looked at a boxed copy, they were all over $1,000.
I saw one in it was last year. I don't think anyone bought it even to the day. It's in Kenosha. I saw one at the store for $800. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Maybe for that. For me, I'm just like, "Shit, man!" But
yeah. Well, and here's what I'll tell people is that unless if you really want the physical copy, the Switch version or the Wii U version or the DS version is better, because you have like the original version has the batteries in it and stuff like that. And like, yeah, it's great to have it physical and whatnot, but the new versions are just as good. And so in my opinion, it is better to buy a Switch and get it as part of the thing and save $750 than buy the boxed version. But for me, the boxed version is, I mean, look, that was like my grail as a kid. And so that was something that I did. I also recently, like I said, Tempest 2000 was one of my favorite games in the Super Mario Brothers 3. And I don't really like the idea of graded games, but I like how they look displayed. And so I bit the bullet and I bought a Tempest 2000 graded, just because I was like, I know that I'm never going to get an Earthbound graded, and I know that I'm never going to get a Super Mario Brothers 3 graded. So I can get this relatively cheap. And so I have Tempest 2000, which is just an outstanding game. The other day I turned on Tempest 2000 in the basement and started playing with it, and was like, I'll just play a couple levels and go to bed. And then I was like, 3 hours later, I should actually drag my sorry self to bed.
Shit.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I did not mean to stay up until 1:30. This is going to impact my day tomorrow. I'm going to drag my butt around until I finally get in gear. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up taking a nap during the day because I was just sitting in front of my computer, and I was just like,
you realize
typing. So
even though even though you feel the next day super tired, you still think about that was still fucking amazing.
Oh yeah,
Just,
like don't get me wrong. The next day, I literally was telling people, like I told my business partner the next day, I was like, dude, I stayed up late last night playing Tempest, and man, I was tired today, but dude, that game was just as great as we remember it. So yeah.
yeah, that's.
And I'll
that's
tell you, if
good.
you like old school arcade games, this is a good thing for everybody. If you like old school arcade games, look up Tempest 4000 for the PS4, Xbox One, and I think it's coming out on Switch now. Someone just recently told me it's coming out on Switch. It's an updated version of Tempest 2000. It's a shooting game that's based on an arcade game from the 80s. So the original is just Tempest, and you've got upgrades, and it's got amazing music and graphics, and it's just crazy insane and hard as nails. And I love every version of it. I like 2000 the best, probably because it's the old school in me, but I beat Tempest 4K on the PlayStation and then bought the Xbox version so I could beat it too.
It's just that's awesome. Guys, there's all this stuff that just calls you back, the replay value that all these things have. That, like, if I got to replay a game that I replayed besides all my old retro, maybe the modern games, I replay a lot of The Last of Us, the original.
Okay. Well, that's funny
just-
because I mentioned before that I'm trying to play my way through that one, and I'm about halfway. So
It's just, I mean, I'll tell you, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Maybe like top 10. That's near the bottom, but like, Zelda, some of my old retro, then somewhere down, it's with the top 10 is The Last of Us. It's just like the experience is amazing. You probably heard enough stuff about the second one. Maybe have you heard of like the people
really
liked
good
it,
about
didn't
the
like
second
it.
one. Yeah.
So it's just kind of, for me, the second one I don't want to have it existed in my mind. It was a great game. I mean, meaning gameplay, the graphics and all that stuff is phenomenal. It was great, but I guess story didn't work for me. But still, I just stayed with the first one. They're actually remaking that game again. They already did a remaster, and then I see that they're just doing it again for PS5. And supposedly there's added features possibly to the story, or like, don't screw it up, please. Just the first. I mean, just you're playing the original one, just way to enjoy the heck out of that. And hope this one will probably come out some other time. But yes, I'm just really back into just enjoying the heck out of my game, and then having my retro stuff. But I wanted to ask you quick.
Well, wait. I want to ask you a question now, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Sure.
So that was your favorite console game. What's your favorite arcade or pinball machine?
Pinball machine. I like Ghostbusters for pinball.
Nice.
Ghostbusters. It's just I remember seeing it, playing it way back then seeing it again at the MidWest. I was like, you shitting me, just kind of like you just loved it, That
it was probably my machine that you played too.
It probably was. It's one of the first ones on the side.
That's mine. It's in the basement.
Oh yeah, it was going to be there again, I'm sure.
I will drag it out again, I promise.
Let's see.
Real quick, that game is interesting because that game kind of did this weird childhood thing. So I was huge into Ghostbusters as a kid, and in 2019, because of that game, Ernie Hudson came to the show, and
no way.
Yeah, and this is the strangest thing, and I still can't believe this, but me and him are still friends to this day, which is just weird. So like, I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife in the theater, and then every year for Thanksgiving, I generally text people that we've worked with and just say, hey, thanks. And so I did my usual text to him, and he wrote me back and was like, oh, I've been meaning to ask you, what do you think of Ghostbusters Afterlife? And I was like, you've been meaning to ask me. Really?
Really?
That is mind-blowing. And I told him that I loved it, and it was awesome because I watched it with I said my younger son was about the same age that I was when I saw the first one. And so that was amazing. And he loved it, and I loved it, and my older son liked it too. And he was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then he was like, if you want, I'll send you a video in character talking to Elias, which is the younger kid, as Winston. I was like, Oh my God,
Wow.
like 3-year-old me or like 6-year-old me is like right now like nerding out, but obviously that's not you don't generally stay friends with people if you just go "Ee!" like the whole time. But that's what I was kind of doing in my head. And
Like,
so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
his
Geeking
birthday
out for
actually
sure.
was coming up and he wanted his birthday theme to video games. He wanted his birthday theme to Nintendo games actually and Ghostbusters. And so that was quite the blast with him. And yeah, so little Dan is still kind of amazed that Big Dan got to meet Ernie Hudson.
Yeah, it's for me, I saw that on the list of past.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried thinking of re-inviting him again, or he's probably busy as heck, with what's going on?
Well,
Maybe.
yeah, so there's a much longer story here about how we get guests, and like who we try to find and stuff like that. And what I'll simply say is that the door is always open for him as well as a whole bunch of other people to return. But it's this thing where a lot of the times the stars kind of have to align just right. And so um, when Ghostbusters, the pinball machine was being made, people at Stern knew that I was a big Ghostbusters fan to the point that Stern, and this is kind of funny, they debuted the game at our show. So we had the first prototypes of the game ever. And it was the year that I was buying the house that I'm in right now. And they kept saying to me, Stern kept saying to me, we are doing our best to allow you to buy one of the games that we get to your show, but we're not sure if we can. And I'm like, guys, number one, I haven't played it. And there's this weird thing with me where a lot of the times, if I love the theme of the game of the pinball machine, I don't love the pinball machine. And so I was like, number one, I haven't played it. And if I don't love it, I don't want it in my house. And then number two, I don't have any spare money, not a dime. Like, you can tell me that you will let me buy it. And I don't know that I can. And so anyway, I ended up not being able to buy it that year, but I scrimped and saved every penny I could to get it the next year. But they that year were like, oh yeah, well, he did voice acting for us. And so him and I ended up chatting back and forth for like 2 or 3 years before he was able to make it. And his schedule is just always kind of busy and he's just kind of everywhere. And so I don't know if he'll ever be able to make it back, but I mean, he would love to come back if we can work out something, but it's really just kind of that. And a lot of that just happens that we as a show, because of like I talked about, I don't remember if I talked about this earlier in this interview or if it was before we started filming, but I'll say again that one of our issues that's both wonderful and terrible is that we have like 75% of our show is content. And so the wonderful part about that is that if you come to our show, there's playable stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
If you go to a lot of other shows, and I'm not trying to throw shade at any other shows because in many ways other shows are more financially viable than our show is, and that's important. But if you go to other shows, that's usually the inverse. The vendor hall is usually 75% and the content is 25% or less of the show. By us having that much content, we're always extremely tight in the way of money and stuff like that. And so we have to just be very careful with how we go about doing things and what we commit to and stuff like that. And it's been interesting because of that. But I hope that one day we can have him back, and we'll see. And like I said, we still chat semi often about stuff, and it's never say never, because the hope is that we can just keep growing, and more people show up and more people get involved like you have tonight, and then more people show up because more people hear, and then eventually we get to the point that instead of it being so financially fragile, if you will, we suddenly have a point where we can afford to do more of the stuff and really bring in, hey, here's these 10 people. Because like one of the things too that was outstanding is that a lot of shows that people go to, and again, not trying to throw any shade at any other shows, because there are people that don't like how we run our show, and that's totally great. That's why there's lots of different shows. But like a lot of different shows, the people that are there as guests are all like, okay, well, you pay for your autograph over here, and there's an autograph line, and there's 50 people, and it's this much, and there's a price list for them all. For the most part, and not everybody, but the most of the guests who come to our show just come to hang out. And so like Ernie, when he was at the show, he didn't charge for autographs. He hung out. He played some games. Him and I ended up talking about Tesla for a while together, and yeah, it was just, and he like came to our after party and hung out at the after party for a while.
He
It
didn't
was just
charge for autographs?
awesome. Nope.
Wow.
When we
Yeah,
had that year too, we had Eric Bischoff and Ernie and Ted DiBiase from wrestling. Neither of them charged.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just no, that's pretty cool. I'm just the arcade itself, or the pinball, it's just it attracted me, of course, my love for Ghostbusters, but also just how beautiful the machine is, just the design, looking at the just staring at it, playing it, just that kind of thing. Yeah, they're all beautiful. They're all gorgeous machines.
Yeah.
But definitely loved the original Super Mario Bros. The original, when I used to own one and sold it to a guy in California a year ago when the pandemic got hard.
Yeah.
Like, dang it, man! So I had to. Things are tough, and either way, I'm glad that he was able to take it. And then he actually had a shipper come, and then it got shipped all the way to California, and he put money into it and fixed it all up or whatever. I mean, it was still, as old as it was great. But yeah, I really loved that one. Through the years of growing up, I was always spending my time at Six Flags in Gurnee. My father's been working there.
I worked there.
My dad's been working there he's still there, 50 years, I think, about. He's still working there.
Where?
He's maintenance guy, all around maintenance person, like everything. You can tell he does. He's always fixed.
That's awesome. I worked there as an executive for 3 years.
For what?
I worked there as an executive for 3 years.
He has his name on the plaque on brick, and so it's just his name is Jose Zires. But yeah, it's just kind of I would go there, family nights.
What was the stuff that he worked on?
Refrigeration, even rides, like brakes for rides. It's pretty much like plumbing, all of it. He's at this time.
I don't know that I would have interacted with him, but I interacted with a couple guys from maintenance when I was there. I actually, I have a pinball part I have a Demolition Man pinball. And when I worked there, I picked up Demolition Man, and there was a weld that was broken on it. And so I had asked the guys who I interfaced with from maintenance, who was, oh shoot, I can't remember their names. I remember what they looked like. Gary Pullman, I think, was one of them, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But I said to them, like, hey, do you know if anybody could weld this for me? I said, I'm not asking to weld it here. I don't want it to be welded on site. I'm saying, could someone take this home and like I can pay them some money to do it on their time off? Who can weld? And they were like, just give it to us. And so they gave it back to me, and they were like, we just did it because we like you. And they were like, we made some improvements to it, and they made it so that it will never break ever, because the original design that weld happened on. But yeah, I worked there for 3 years as a ride operator, and then 3 years as an executive. And they just got a new park president, and that park president has come to our show many a times. So I think I remember the recent one had passed or something like that. So one of the presidents. So just but I remember being there and playing I think House of the Dead on the arcades, and just it's just kind of a lot of my arcade also experience as a kid was also partly there too. So that's kind of weird, because a lot of mine was too. I loved the arcade that was by now it's where X Flight is, but it was by the gosh, it was more by where the Eagle entrance is, I guess. And they used to have some awesome pinball machines there.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff there. And
yeah, I play the pinball machines there all the time. And when I worked there, I loved playing Carnival, the light gun game where you go to an amusement park, basically. I have one of them now in my basement.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Like, man, for me, like, I mean, going at I went to the days of family night, especially because at that point you didn't have to throw the coins in. I just tell the guy, like, he just click all the credits in there, like, yes, psst, keep going.
You know what's crazy is me and you probably hung out without knowing it at some of those in I don't know, 10 years ago or so when I was there.
I was always in all that stuff, just playing with them, and if I came here to visit, I had to go into it. And if my family wanted to do something else, they know where to leave me. Just stay right there, search around.
So you'll appreciate this. Probably in 2007 or 8, somewhere around there, shortly after I restarted, the old arcade that was in the county fair section of the park, where there was the big game area for the games department, and then there was an arcade, and the arcade had been closed for years. They were looking to do something else with the arcade, and so they were like, Dan, you know about arcade games, because at the time I probably already had 20-25 games, and so they were like, you know about arcade games, go in there and tell us what has value. And so I was like going around with a flashlight, like crawling over games, because they had just like thrown them on top of each other in there. It was like a true warehouse find, but it was almost all just complete garbage and junk. The only things that were truly interesting there was some skee ball machines, and then there was a game called Milk Bessie, which is a hilarious game from Sega, where it's a cow and you have the 6 udders, and the udders of the cow would light up, and you'd have to squeeze them on which ones are lit up. It was like Simon. And I told them, the only games that I think have any value are the skee ball, and I don't know about the cow, but maybe the cow. And they were like, okay, cool. Do you know anybody that wants to buy them? I'm like, not offhand, but I can get in touch with some people if you want. And they were like, well, don't do that yet. We'll find out. And then I was actually, because the position that I got flown out to other parks semi-regularly, and I was getting flown out to another park, and they called me up that day, the person who had asked me to look at it, and they were like, hey, we have to get rid of this stuff in the next 3 days. Do you want to come and get any? I'm like, dude, I am leaving the state in like 20 minutes. There's no way that I can. And they were like, nuts. But I know someone that went there and bought a skee ball machine for $1, and it worked.
For what?
Yep.
Okay.
Because they were just trying to get rid of it. Everything else got trashed. Everything else just got destroyed. So they were like, yeah, if you want something, we need you to pay $1 so we can transfer it to you. And so, yeah, he brought a truck, and maybe it was 2 skee ball machines, but he definitely got one, and he paid a whopping $1 for it. I was like, man, do I wish that I would have just said, like, to the plane, like, oh, hey, I need my plane ticket pushed. And I just went and got a truck and filled it up with skee balls or whatever. Not that I would have had a place. At the time, I had the world's smallest house. And we have a storage area. Our storage area is in the basement of a place, and it's like there's absolutely no way that I would have gotten a skee ball machine down there. But I guarantee that I would have gotten a skee ball machine and done something with it. I don't know how I would have done anything with it, but I would have had a skee ball machine from Six Flags.
Well, so at least someone got it, that you spoke to. And
yeah,
I mean,
I think Milk Bessie got destroyed though. I now know someone that's had one. It might make a reappearance at the show this year, because a person that owns one of them has brought it in the past, and so he had asked me, do you think we should bring back Bessie? And I'm like, we should always bring back Bessie. So
you never know. It's just, it's got value, the people, that want to, remember their past, and that might be a piece of history for them.
Well, and it's weird, so that's always a bonus too. And skee ball is just awesome.
Okay. See, I wanted to ask, I know you've been posting a lot, or who does it? Do you post stuff a lot on the M?
Almost all me. So yeah, real quick, the way that the structure of the business is that up until, it's hard to do math with COVID. I think about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, no one was full-time on the show. We started Goat Store, and we ran Goat Store, and then we started Midwest Gaming Classic, and it got bigger and bigger, but we were doing it in between everything else that we did. And when we moved downtown, we had been at a hotel before that point. When we moved downtown, we more than doubled our space. And suddenly, I took off a year when we did that, I took off a year. I'd been a teacher at that point. After I did Six Flags, I was a teacher. I've been all over the place. But so I was doing teaching. And I said, I need to take a year, because we moved into this house the same year. So this house that I'm in is really old. It's from 1886. And so it needed just a lot of like little things fixed in it. And I'm pretty handy. So I was like, here's the deal. I've got a little bit of money saved up. I'm going to take a year, and I'll be a substitute teacher for 2 days a week, which will be enough money for me to be able to get by. I'll repair the house for 2 days a week. I'll work on the show for 1 day a week. And if I work on the show for 1 day a week, that should be enough time, because like in previous years, I had worked on the show for maybe 12 hours a week. So I was like, yeah, that'll be great. I'll do that. And then after that, we'll go back to it. Well, the move downtown, lo and behold, was so crazy that I was working 50 hours a week on the show. and I was not substitute teaching, and I was not fixing the house. And as you can imagine, my wife was fit to be tied with the, oh, Dan quit his job to go home and work on a show that doesn't make money for all of this time. And not exactly how you come up with happy wife, happy life or anything like that. More like insane me, and I just felt crazy. And so we had a real sit down, because the Ghost Story MidWest Gaming Classic has been me and my buddy for like, I mean, we when we were in like 6th grade had wanted to make a business together, and so here we are today. And I sat down and was just like, all right, we need to talk, because I can't do this next year. Like, I have to make money next year, but I also like, if I do that, there's no way for me to do the show. And so what should we do? And so we sat down and figured out a way to basically tweak the budget and stuff like that to say, okay, we will make you full time. And so I've been full time on the show for a couple of years. And because of that, the vast majority of stuff now is done by me. And he tends to run the vendor hall, and I tend to run, like, the joke is that he makes all the money and I spend all the money, because I do the content side of the show, which also means that I tend to post and I tend to be interviewed and stuff like that, because it's not really interesting to talk and be like, so how's the vendor hall this year? It's looking good. We've sold some space. Cool. Do you know what people are going to be selling? No. Like, that's not the interesting stuff. So when you come to me and you're like, oh, hey, what's something cool that's going on? I can be like, oh, let me tell you about our tournaments, or let me tell you about our pinball machines, or let me tell you about there's a new arcade company that's coming in, or whatever. I have that stuff that I can tell people. And so I tend to do that, and I tend to be the poster and all that other stuff. That was a long answer to a simple question, but
that's fine. No, that's fine. It's good to know more about you and that aspect there. Give me some insight on what we're expecting for 2022.
Yeah, so as you've probably seen, this is the biggest MidWest Gaming Classic ever. And so basically what happened is a couple things. The first is that the Wisconsin Center is under construction. And so it led to us, we had a lot of long conversations to try to figure out, okay, what can we do to figure out space for the show? And so what we ended up having to do, because so our vendor hall that we had last year, I'm doing this to signify how wide it is, got cut in half by construction. And so what we ended up doing is that we moved our vendor hall to the first level where there's a ballroom. Now the vendor hall itself was 63,000 square feet this last year. The ballroom, if you look up the square footage, is like 37,000 square feet, but it actually got bigger because we're taking out the tabletop gaming and we're moving that to a different room. And we had a big food court in the back of the vendor hall, and we're taking that out and we're moving that to a different place. And we have a huge foyer. So if you include the foyer, we're probably at about 55 to 60,000 square feet that we get to use for this area. And by moving out the other stuff, we're using that all for tables. So our actual tables have gone up by 10 to 20%. And so that's the first really big thing that we're doing. The second thing is that we are moving into the first floor, which we've never used before. On the other side, they have some smaller rooms. And so we're putting a tabletop room in for all the tabletop games. We're putting in a tabletop RPG room, and we're putting in a trading card game room. So Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then the hallway, we're making a better esports / tournament area. So we've actually done a lot of different esports events have been like founded at the MidWest Gaming Classic, and then they've kind of moved on. And so we're trying to find a way that we can better present a lot of what we do and hopefully keep more of those here. So like, for instance, the Classic Tetris World Championship, the first show that was doing a large scale Tetris tournament was actually us. And then we weren't able to expand it. So the guy who founded Classic Tetris World Championship came to us, saw how we were doing it, and was basically took it back and made it better, which is great. I love what he's done with it. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we can improve some of that so that hopefully in the future, instead of needing to basically pass them off to people that have better resources to do that, we can keep a lot of that type of stuff in-house. And that should make that whole area very exciting and vibrant. The second level will still be the community zone, which is a lot of different groups that come and they take over their own room. So like, for instance, there's a group, Guys, Games, and Beer, and they bring Yeah, they bring a huge room full of really unique stuff. So, like for instance, a Steel Battalion lands. So if you don't know, it's like a controller that's like as big as a semi truck, and it has like seriously, it has I think like 62 different buttons on it. And so you sit down and you learn how to use this, and it's something that would be way too intimidating for most people to normally do. But instead, by how they've used it, you sit down and you're like, oh man, like they'll help me learn. And so you have to like press a button and like press 3 more buttons to start all the different engines and stuff. And it's awesome, and it's a way that you can go and check that out. So that's the type of stuff that we've got there. And then the third floor, we have the Return of the Game Center, which is our huge arcade video game hall and computer hall. And so that's going to be stacked with just tons of stuff again. And yeah, we'll probably have the cars up there this year because of the ballroom on the first floor has carpet, and so they generally don't like it when you park cars on the carpet. But yeah, we're still figuring out where we're putting the Teslas this year because Tesla was so happy with the show last year that they want to do test drives for us this year for anybody who comes to the show too. So that's a new thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
And there's fingers crossed. There's no guarantee, but they were like, we're pretty sure that we'll have a Plaid Model S that people can test drive. And I was like, can I test drive that? So yeah. So if you want to go 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds, you might be able to do that at the show this year. Yeah, so just it's more stuff in different places, and we're excited for it. We've got the main stages returning it back upstairs. We're working right now on the VIG party to nail down a few last things, but it looks like the actual VIG party will be the biggest version of the VIG party that we've ever had. And so yeah, just tons of awesome stuff, and we're really excited to see it all happen.
I missed the VIG after party last time. My son got a little tired, so I drove him back. So I was like, that's why this time I want to stay, hotel. Because I heard at first we were waiting for a little bit, and then it seems like I saw the pictures afterwards. I'm like, fuck. You guys had a good time.
What we always tell people about the VIG after party is that the VIG after party is like the I've always described it as it's like me when I was 12 if I had a fever dream. So like for instance, this last year there's a game called Batsu, and it's there's actually a comedy club for this game. Excuse me. There's a comedy club for this game in Chicago and one in New York, and they made a like tabletop version of their game, and they were like, "Oh, let's see who will play it." And so they had one of the voice actors from the show. They had Dylan, who wrestles as Swaggle, who's a wrestler who was in the WWE for like 10 years in the show, and they had someone else, and they were doing crazy stuff. There was a tournament on a wrestling game that Dylan actually played in. There's a whole bunch of other like crazy stuff that we do at it. There's different bands and stuff like that we can do, and pretty much all of the VIPs throughout the show up at there for at least a little while. One of my favorite things that we ever did at the after party was in 2019. When you got into the after party, everybody that comes, we give them a drink ticket, and the person who was handing out the drink tickets in 2019 was Ted DiBiase. And so if you know your old school wrestling, DiBiase was the $1 Million Man. And so yeah, he was handing out drink tickets that said buy one drink on me, and it looked like a dollar bill, and buy one drink on me, and it had his face on it. And it was so funny because people would walk in and they'd be like, "Hey, thanks," and you go, "Ha ha ha ha," and they would be like, "Oh, that is funny. Oh my God." We like the whole goal of that after party is to let people hang out and do stuff outside of their normal like comfort zone and stuff that you wouldn't expect. One of the other things that's amazing is Tim Kitzrow, who's the voice of NBA Jam. So if you've ever played NBA Jam, the voice that goes, "He's on fire." We have Papa Shot at the after party. So, you're shooting the basketballs, and we usually have a period where while you are playing Papa Shot, Tim Kitzrow will live call the Papa Shot for you. And so he'll like be over there and be like, "This guy's doing terrible," and stuff like that. And so it's like hilarious. We had we've had and then actually one of the craziest things, because I know you had some of the Mortal Kombat guys on here, is Tony, who used to be Kung Lao, has a band now called Kung Lao that
Yep.
the after party. And so
I was like, dang.
yeah, I've just been, well, he's coming back this year. They're going to be, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to come to every other show that we do from now until forever because they're amazing. And so
Yeah, I hear you.
yeah, they're going to be doing their thing, and I'm excited to have them back. So yeah, it's a blast, and we're looking at adding, honestly, like 25 different activities to it right now. So I'm very excited to see what we can all come up with.
Yeah, that sounds nuts. I can already see myself having a good time right now. I see myself getting wasted at the end of the night. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, that does happen out there too.
after the after party, you have to carry me back to the hotel.
Yep.
Just yeah, just kind of like what I want to experience, this time around. When I just pretty much miss out that, but all the new things, the changes, things like that. I'm excited to see what happens every year. So you reminded me about shoot. I met you watch wrestling? Do you
I semi-watch wrestling.
well back in the day it was Eddie Guerrero. Remember him at all?
Yeah. Yep.
I ran into his daughter at a performance, and my brother's a drag queen, so he does his drag, and she was performing burlesque or something like that. I think you call it.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, who's this? And I was like, and somebody's like, that's so shut up. And I was like, and I'm just, and then we clicked in. Oh, she's also a WWE wrestler. Her mom is, her husband is, but she was there. Just kind of reminds me of like, just kind of, when, these people. I didn't know that some people are just so local. You just run into them, and you get surprised.
Right. Well, and that's where for us. So Dylan, I heard from someone else. From a different promoter, actually, they were like, oh man, if you're ever looking for someone in Wisconsin, you really need to talk with Dylan. And I was like, who's Dylan? And they were like, Hornswoggle. I'm like, oh, Hornswoggle's in Wisconsin? And they were like, yeah, he's in Appleton and he runs his own school. And they do performances. And I was like, all right. And so I got the number from him, and I got the number like a week before COVID shut us down. And so I never contacted. And honestly, this is a story that is just how great some people are. And so when we found out that we're coming out of COVID, I called it, or I found the email address, and I was like, all right, so I'm going to email him and just say, hey, my name's Dan Lucen, I run the show. And I sent off that email, and I said, here's my phone number. If you want to call me instead, that'd be great. And, we'd love to see what you think. And yeah. And so I sent that off. And like 10 minutes later, I get a text that says, oh my God, I can't wait to do this. Can I run a tournament there? And I was like,
what?
Who is this? He's like, sorry, this is Dylan. I'm in for the show. Can I run a tournament? I've been wanting to run an old school wrestling tournament. And I was like, yeah. And we started chatting, and like, unfortunately, this show got scheduled on the same weekend that he's out of town this year. But like, him and I have ended up texting back and forth also a relative bunch. And like, he's good people. And quite frankly, like, I still get texts out of the blue from Ted DiBiase every once in a while, which is also
wow.
Like, wow, that's awesome. And yeah, they're just really good because they understand that, a show like ours, to make it work, requires the collaboration of everybody to come together and create something unique. And so one of my favorite conversations actually with Ted DiBiase was when we were talking to him about coming in. He was like, Dan, I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to come, but I don't really know anything about the WWF video games. And I was like, of course you don't. I was like, can you imagine, man, that your job is going out and wrestling, and then what? You're going to go home and play yourself doing your job wrestling? That's the dumbest thing. Like, don't worry about it. And I said, can you just be honest about that? And he said, yeah, of course. And he said, as long as you're not angry about it. I said, no. So that makes total sense. I said, when I worked at Six Flags, the last thing that I wanted to do was go like hang out in Six Flags when I had time off. That was not my goal. And he was like, okay. And so one of the things that we did is during his presentation that we had, we actually showed how he looked in many of those early games. We're like, oh yeah, look at this. This is you in like WWF Superstars for the arcade. He was like, what? That,
What?
why is my head so small? And it was hilarious. So, like it was, and like we showed him the Game Boy, and he was just like, "How do you even know that's me?" And like, yeah, he was just awesome. And like the other thing too is that he just like walked through everywhere, and I don't think that he'd be angry at me telling this story, but he texted me on Saturday morning when he woke up and was like, "Oh my God, Dan," he said, "I feel terrible. I my back every once in a while goes out," and he said, "I slept and everything seemed fine, and I woke up and it's hard for me to stand up. Do you know any chiropractors that would be open today that I can talk with or anything?" And I was like, "I have a chiropractor. Let me see what I can do." And so I was able to reach out to my chiropractor through Facebook, and she was willing to come in. And so she came in and adjusted him. No idea who he was, none whatsoever. And so he afterwards, I told him, because he was like, "Oh my God, she was one of the best chiropractors I've ever had. You know, that was awesome. If I was in Milwaukee, I'd start going to her today. That was great." And so I said to him, "You know, she does not know much of anything about who you are. You should give her a signed autographed picture that she could put up at the office." And so he did exactly that. And so at her office now, in her adjusting room, is a picture of Ted DiBiase that says something like, you know, "To the greatest chiropractor in Wisconsin." And so it's funny
That's
because
cool.
you know,
That's
some
cool.
people that have gone there and have been like, "Oh yeah, she's the chiropractor for Ted DiBiase." And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." So it's, and again, that's just where like the spirit of collaboration just kind of always works with our show, and it's just kind of weird that way of like, "Oh well, let's find you a chiropractor," and you know, now it just everybody works. And like she asked me about the show, and she's now come to she's not a gamer, but she's come to the show when Ted's not there because she was like, "This was way cooler than I expected." So yeah.
It's cool. Just kind of keep in touch, and people can't make it one day, or I mean, next time they'll make it. They can, you
Yeah.
know, and just as you do what you do, and yeah, it's always good to, as you know, everything that you do through through the years, all the people you meet, they still give you the time, and that's really nice of a lot of people. You just it's like dedication of what they do, their job, what they love doing. Like I had when I had this today, Yano Anaya from the Christmas Store. You know, it's just like people give you that time. You know, they're really good spirited people, and they with everything you do. You know, you're giving me the time yourself today. You know, you're the co-founder of the MGC, and that's really an amazing thing for me to have. I was excited, like, okay, we can talk some gaming, you know, talk about this and that, and we've so far I'm having a great conversation with you. So it's just good to know what's coming, you know,
Yeah.
and like my experience from last time, I know that this coming is going to be far more amazing than
Yeah.
last time. It's just like another time to geek out on what I love doing. And much as I got work and I take martial arts, and like tomorrow morning, I do a lot of things, but I also need to have my game time. I want to play. Sometimes it's hard to play. I can play sometimes, but those 3 days, that's all I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there.
and I will tell you that I really appreciate stuff like this because for me, especially honestly, the last 24 months exactly as of right now, because it was 24 months and let's see here. If 9 days from now, I think it was 3/13/2020 that the show was shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
And basically the last 2 years have been crazy. And there's been, even now, like I tend to be very honest about things. Even now, there's days where I'm just like, oh my God, like I don't know that I want to do this today. And it's not because of, I mean, like I obviously love what I do because I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I was a teacher and I took a pay cut to start doing MidWest Gaming Classic full time. And teachers aren't exactly known for being paid well, so you can imagine that I'm still not being paid super well for it. But I did it because I was like, I really like the interaction with stuff. And it's been tough because for COVID there's so much like odd political nature to what COVID is, and like I'm not the one that decides how to deal with the virus. Like I've had so many people though that are like, oh, you know, if we had so many people that were like, oh my God, if you open up the show, you're going to kill all the babies. And then we would have someone else that would
Come
say,
on.
oh my God, if you're going to check vaccine cards, you're clearly a fascist. And it's just like, I'm neither. We run in a government facility. They tell us what we need to do. I talk with the experts at the health department that say this is what you need to do, and I listen to them because I'm a guy who sets up video games and pinball machines, and I know how to do that. But I'm going to let the health people do their side of it, and then it's so like I've had to deal with so much of that in the last 24 months that I can't tell you how refreshing it is to have this type of conversation and not spend the whole time going like, oh my God, well, let's talk about how bad COVID sucks, and let's talk about how much like shutting down the show sucked and like all that other stuff. It's nice to just think about like, man, like honestly, talking about Buster Bust Loose is a game that you are the first person that's ever asked me about Buster Bust Loose in an interview, and that's amazing because God, I have such great memories of that, and so being able to share those,
God,
it's exhilarating, and I'm now like, like I wish that we would have had this interview very early on today, because today was a day that I just could not get myself fully motivated to do stuff. Part of my issue right now is just that there's so many different things that are flying in that it's hard to figure out like, oh, that's the one that I should do next, because it's like, okay, like I've had so many different things just kind of like pile on my lap. And so it's like, I feel like I should know, well, this one should be first and this one should be second. And it's very hard to figure out how to prioritize like that. And so I was just like, I would kind of start something and be like, that's probably not the one I should be doing. And then start something else and be like, that's not the one that I should be doing. And what's frustrating is that, you know, when you're a sole business owner or a business, like self-employed business owner is the better way. Like you never really are off, and you're like, tomorrow, I guarantee that I'm going to do 8 hours worth of stuff because I didn't do as much of it today. But like, this is the type of thing where right now I feel like I could sit down and write 5,000 emails after this and like nail down a bunch of stuff and update the website and do all this, because like, this is the stuff that gets me really excited to do this. And so thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's just, when I went there last in November, there was no issue with walking in and showing some proof of this. That it was fine. It worked out well. People will exaggerate their minds away and just, I think you did a tremendously amazing job. You guys did on November, believe it, because it felt, I walked in my first time. Everyone was nice. Everyone was cool. Everyone was chill. Security was great. It was perfect. The way I felt walking in there, getting in line. People weren't wearing masks. Some weren't. Whatever. Just some people had proof. Whatever. It's just. I think this April, it's going to be even bigger, like you're saying. But people are going to. I think more people are going to come.
Yeah.
It's the way it feels. You know, just come. Yeah. I think everything now is starting to ease off, you know, all states.
April's our traditional time. We've been in the spring for like 10 years or more at this point. So I think that will actually bring some more people back. And having said that, it's not like we really shrank. We had 15,000 people in 2019. We had 14,000 people this last November. And so running a show in November in the middle of a pandemic, I felt like that was a good thing. And what I do my best to remember is that the people who shout about crazy things are like, there's 5% of people on the far left and 5% of people on the far right that are kind of crazy. And like, I get it. Like, I don't want to go into a huge political rant, but I'll simply say our politicians are incentivized to play towards the most extreme people. And so they give them the highest voices. And so you have the people that are over here that are saying, this is all a hoax, and everybody that believes in it is a liar, which is clearly not true to most people. And then you have people over here that are like, oh my God, we should all stay away from everybody forever because otherwise we're all going to die, which is also not true. And those voices then end up being amplified because unfortunately we have a political system where the extremes are like getting a lot of the voices. And then double that up with our biggest marketing tool is social media, where those voices and that type of fight, people were looking to do that because they were bored. And so, like, if I'm going to be the person over here that's really scared, and like, look, the people who are saying like, oh my God, if you do this, you're like a fascist or whatever, they actually believe, well, and they believe that. They've been told that this is the first step to communism or whatever. And I have nothing to do with that. One of them said to me, you have no right to see my health, my vaccination status. And I was like, you're right. You don't have to come to my show. Like, it's real simple. If I go out and hold a gun to everybody and say, you either come to my show or I shoot you, then you have every right to say that I'm a fascist. But until I do that, it's your choice to show up. And then it's your choice to show me that. And then the other side is that, like, the people that say, well, you have to just shut it down because otherwise someone could get infected at your show. It's like, yeah, but we all know that at this point. Like, you know, and like it's a risk, but hopefully we're going to do everything we can to mitigate that as best as possible. And those voices, though, like to like fight online. And so, especially because there was so much of the last 2 years where like it was Groundhog Day that we didn't really know what was going on. And I was basically just seeing the social media stuff of someone over here saying like, this is all a hoax. Why would you ever shut down the show? And then there was someone over here going, this isn't a hoax, and you guys are going to kill babies if you ever come back. You should never come back. And it's just like, oh, I hate all of you. Like, none of these make sense. And, you know, what's great is when you actually, like, when we actually hold the show, the 5% of people over here and the 5% of people over here didn't come. It was all the normal people in the middle. And, like, we can have different opinions on different things. We can have an opinion for what we should be doing with this or what that. But we don't solve that by just yelling at each other and saying that everybody's crazy. We solve that by getting together. And that's what I've always felt like the Midwest Gaming Classic helps to do, is it gets together people of different backgrounds and gives us a common language to talk about. So, you know, me and you we could sit down, we could talk about Buster Bust Loose for another hour. And then that could go on to me and you talking about like, oh, what do you feel about, you know, this situation that's going on in the real world? And maybe we have a different background, but now that we've got something else that links us first, if me and you have a polar opposite view of something, we've got something that we respect each other over. And because we now respect each other over that item, we can probably have a much more fruitful conversation than just going, you're going to kill everybody, you're a fascist, which is not helpful. So I don't know, that's my little, I believe that there's a real place in the world for stuff like this to really help. And maybe I'm crazy, but that's what I believe.
I'm telling you, I mean, people they want to be that way. They're missing out. Oh, I don't know for you, I mean, or for some people, but I went there and I enjoyed every second, whether it's the Ghostbuster vehicle from the Wisconsin guys. I actually keep in touch with them, and I got their card. I did a lot of filming, sent them some film back, and then they got a thing going on too that, you know, like I met people there and want to do things with them, you know, or
yeah.
I even enjoyed the food. I'm fine with the burger I had there. And after the burger, I had a Blue Moon. I had fries, and then right after I ate that, I went to go get a pizza right away. Right after that, sat down with some more food. I don't know. It was just like chill time. And then freaking this dude sat right next to me. I was like, oh shit, you know, he was on the table with his family or so, and you know, I respected him. You know, like let him eat. You know, the big star, and then I saw him later and bought some stuff from him. But yeah, it was just you know, no matter what, and you got freaking. I'm still tripping now. Let me see his name. I got it right here. Dave Weiss. That's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that knocks my socks off. Donkey Kong Country. Oh my god. I'm just like, dude. Now I'm freaking out right now because that's what I can't wait to see. And the other guy, is just. So I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, if people want to miss out, let them miss out. But you know.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, we've got probably another 20 people to unveil basically at any time. It's just a matter of, there's a guy for me that helps me update that part of the website, only because so many people give me stuff and it takes a while. And so he's like, hey, what can I do for you? And he used to edit a website himself. So I'm like, hey, you want to put up these people? And so he has, I believe, 5 or 6 more people in his possession right now that are ready to be announced, and we probably have another 10 to 15 that are ready to go up. And it's fascinating. And like the other thing that's really cool about this year is that most of the guests that we have coming have come to us, not the other way around. And I love that, because what I mean is that, like, for instance, we have Kevin Conran coming. And so Kevin Conran is the art director for Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, the animated movie, like one of the first CG movies from like 2004 or so. That was it kind of looks like an old school video game now, but it came out in theaters. And he came to us because one of the authors that we've worked with, Tim Lapatino, was like, hey, I helped edit this book. Would you guys have any interest in having him out there to talk about how computer games inspired this movie? And I was like, yes, we would. That would be outstanding. And so, like, basically he came to us. Warren Davis, who's one of the creators of Qbert, came to me and was like, dude, it's been too long. What can we do? I want to come back out. Okay, like, that's awesome. And that's awesome, like, yeah. It's really cool that we've got, and that's happened with so many different people. We have that with some of the people who we've announced that are coming for like podcasts and stuff like that, have been people that have come to us and said, hey, and then a lot of them were people that have said, ooh, like we said to them, hey, we don't really have much money this year because we're still trying to recover from COVID, but do you know anybody who might just want to come to the show? And so a lot of times they were like, ooh, this person's kind of nearby and they might want to come, and, can you help them out a little bit? And then we'd be able to figure it out. And so we have some really cool people that are coming this year. And like I said, a whole bunch more to be announced. And it's mostly just that it all comes back to that collaborative nature of like, oh, let's all come together and let's all create something truly unique and awesome. And you never know exactly how it's going to turn out. So
it's time to get out of that, get out of that isolation that we've been in and just keep coming out and enjoying what we love the most, and meeting people and making new friends, and and I'll run into you and say what's up, just I said I met a new friend today, and just want to be supportive if I can and be involved, and because like I said, it's just kind of just the experience that when I walked in with my son, doing that with my boy was just enough of an experience to just like, fuck, man. It's just like, and we talk about it. And my son's like, this is one of the best things we've done in a long time.
So it's like, I literally get the like goosebumps when you say that, because that's one of the things that we always tried doing of our show. We very early on said, okay, we want to have a way that you can have people share this with the younger generation, because otherwise, not saying that we were the ones that made retro popular, because we talked about that before, but like, otherwise, how does my son discover that Doodle World is a cool game if he's not introduced to it somehow? He's not going to see it on TV. He's not going to watch a YouTuber talking about it, chances are, unless if he's into other Nintendo games already. He's going to like randomly come across it only in a situation like this. And so we really wanted something that we could take kids to. And I mentioned the Guys, Games, and Beer Room before, and those guys help us out all the time on different things. And it's the way that they started helping was the one of the main founders of it, his name's Tom. Tom brought his son Travis to the show in like 2006 or 2007, when Travis was like 11 or 12, and they just loved the show and they thought it was the coolest thing. And one of the things that Tom said is that it's the only show that I saw grandparents walking around with grandchildren at. And like he said that the thing that sold him on the show more than anything else was that there was a grandparent that was walking around with a little stool, and that he had a granddaughter with him, and they would walk up to a pinball machine and they'd put the stool down and then they would trade off playing it. And he was like, that's incredible, and I want to get involved with that. And now Tom and his son Travis are like two of our biggest volunteers for the show. I interact with them on a regular basis, and just like we're doing this crazy arcade building project, and they've been helping with the whole plans for that. And it's incredible. And that's the thing, is that they were like, when we get older, we'd like to get involved and help this. And like I said, the thing that's truly magical about the show is that we have like 500 different volunteers or more for the show. And it's really just the same type of situation, is that like we've created an environment where people can come in and do their own thing. And like that's kind of the big thing. People come to me sometimes and they're like, Dan, you do the content for the show, so what should I do to make people interested in my booth? And I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, but what should I do? And I'm like, what do you feel passionate about? And they're like, well, it's not so much about what I like. I want to do something that other people like. I'm like, if you feel passionate about it, you're going to get people to do it because they're interested in seeing that. And so like the Steel Battalion thing that I mentioned is a perfect example. That game is way too intimidating for someone to normally walk up and play. But when you've got some of them there going, oh my God, you've got to check out this game. Come over here. Then you're like, okay, whatever. I'm going to sit down and try this. I'll do it once. And then you're like, oh, this is actually really cool. Look at that. And you get that experience. And so like a story that I always tell is that there was a podcast that came to our show, and they were like, they were a podcast that was all about RPGs. And they were like, well, we can't do RPGs at the show because it's just too long. I'm like, no. Like, figure out a way that you can do something with RPGs. That's your passion. They were like, no, we're going to do a shmup tournament. So they did like a 2D shoot 'em up tournament on like Raiden or something. And I was like, okay. And they were like, yeah, don't you think that's great? I was like, I don't know. And they did it. And then they were all disappointed that there wasn't that many people that were into it. I was like, you guys are like the RPG show. You did something on not RPGs. And you guys, even when you were doing it, were kind of like, yeah, it's a shooting game. And so I was like, no one cares if you don't care. But if you get into it, it doesn't matter what it is. People that are walking around our show are conditioned to get excited about things that other people are excited about. If you walk by the Magic room and you've never played Magic before and someone goes, dude, let me show you Magic. Come here. Chances are you're going to be like, all right, I got an hour. Let's go check it out. And like, who knows? Maybe I literally had this happen to a friend of mine. They learned how to play Magic for our shows. And like 2 weeks later, I get a text from him it said, screw you, Dan. And it had like $50 worth of Magic cards that he had just purchased in a picture on his phone. He was like, this is the first deck that I built. And he now plays every Friday. And I'm like, yeah, it's
you never know.
And like, man, it wasn't, he wasn't actually angry at me, perhaps, obviously. It was just like you find these different things. And like, I have people who bought their first pinball machine because they came to the show and they discovered that they adored pinball. And I have people who get into I have people that just get into like, some people just love helping us do things. And so they like, we've had people that will show up just to help us clean our storage area, which is outstanding. And like I said, it gives me this faith in the human spirit and humans in general that I feel like so much of what we do in just normal times is not highlighting the ways that we can work together to create things that are bigger than any one person can do. And this is kind of an example of something that truly is bigger than one person could do. It's definitely not me. I mean, some people have said in the past, when you do interviews, you always say that you don't really do anything, but you really do a lot. And I'm like, no, I understand that I do a lot, but like nobody comes to the show to see Dan Lucen. It's not the Dan Lucen show. It's not like I stand up and like do a dance and everybody's like, yeah, that's right. They come because they want to see the passions that other people have. And do I bring some of my own stuff? Yeah. So if you want to come to the Dan Lucen show, it's like 10 to 15 pinball machines, 5 arcade games, and that's probably about it. But the rest of the people is what makes the show so unique, and we give them the ability to create something and put it out there for people to see. And like, if anybody who's listening to this goes, man, I've always wanted to show off my rare collection of, I don't know, Wyvern cards from 1993 that nobody cares about anymore, we'll be like, yeah, you want a spot to do Wyvern? Heck yeah. And I say Wyvern because, damn, I used to play that game and it was fun. And I don't know that anybody else remembers it now, but I bought myself a box of them recently for like $60 because I was like, damn right, I'm going to stare at this box of Wyvern cards because I used to love it. And like, that's the type of thing where if someone was there teaching someone that game, they'd be like, yeah, they'd get people to sit down and play it. And it's unique, and we love being able to provide that venue, and we love being able to provide that venue to people who are like small companies that are like, hey, actually, I guess one perfect example of that is we had a group that came out the first year because they made a little computer game that they were like, oh, we just want to show people what we made. And so people played it and they're like, oh, this is awesome. Can we buy it? And they were like, not yet, but maybe we will make this sellable because everybody likes it so much. And so the following year, they decided that they were going to, the goal was to start selling it on Steam shortly after the show. So they made a big arcade cabinet for it. and they put it in the arcade cabinet, and they were like, we'll use the arcade cabinet as a way to tell people that the Steam game's coming. And they brought it out, and they had like 5 or 6 people come to them and be like, all right, I want to buy the arcade game. And they're like, oh, it's not actually an arcade game. And they're like, yeah, it is. Can I buy this then from you? And they were like, what? And so they turned it into an arcade game, and they sold, I don't know, a bunch of units. It's the game Cosmotrons.
Right.
And that game literally wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us just saying to them, like, oh, you've got a game? Yeah, we'll give you a spot. Go show people. And they've raised that a few times, that like if it wasn't for us just saying, yeah, come, go do it, that, you know, they wouldn't have that. And so it's exciting.
The if I'm saying it right, the competition at the stage on November
Killer Queen?
was it that? Yeah, they had the younger kids. They were fighting each other. They had the screens at the very top over the stage, meaning that we can watch.
Was it on Sunday or on Saturday?
Had to been I think it was Saturday.
Then it was probably Cosmotrons, actually, because Cosmotrons gave away some big prizes on Saturday at the show.
Yeah, there was. I just remember watching it, and then just it felt like, I swear, like I was in the movie Pixels for some reason. I don't know why. It just, I don't know. You got this feel like my son was next to me, like, Dad, this is so fucking cool. Like, yeah, right. Yeah, he's like, you know, and he's 19, and I'm 41, and almost 42, and we're just like where have we been all these years? The hell, but it's just the feel of being in certain sections of the part made you feel different, like, being there, or the whole thing gives you a kind of a different gaming experience, but an amazing experience that it does. It pulls you in because you're like, I can't wait to see what the cosplay. This is my first time doing something like that. The cosplay was really cool. I liked the way that you guys had some wrestling action. Some of the wrestlers from the Wisconsin area when they put on a show, and it's been a while, and that was actually a pretty damn good show too.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, unfortunately, they won't be back until next year. They will be back in 2023, but that's Swaggle's school, and it was actually funny because he came up to me and he was like, okay, I was expecting about a third of this many people, and I was like, so was I, and I would have thought that was a success. And he said, yeah, that's exactly how I felt about it. And he's like, I can't believe how many people are here. We estimated that there was more than 500 people that watched both of their shows.
Wow.
And so and it just sucks because they miswrote down the weekend, and so he is scheduled to be out of town on a vacation that he could not move, and the other people at the school were not free. So he was like, I feel terrible. And he like wrote me and he was like, I totally understand if you find a different school. And I'm like, dude, you don't get it. Like, we are fiercely loyal to the people, and I'm not going to go out looking for another school. I said, if another school comes, I'll talk with them, but we kind of already found you guys and we loved what you guys did, and I'd rather have you back. And even if it means waiting for a year, that's okay. And so they'll be back. And yeah, it's unique. And like, even the cosplay thing, the way that the cosplay started at the show was I was at one of the theaters in Milwaukee, because we used to have a relationship with them where we'd promote their shows for shows that our crowd would like, and then we'd hand out flyers at their shows. So I would go to the show and like hand out flyers. And I think that this was at a thing where, like, I think it was maybe the symphony orchestra presenting like the Star Trek music or something like that. And so my dad and I were there, and we were handing out flyers, and this one woman got one, and she went by, and I didn't even register to me that I had given her one, but she came back a little bit later and she says, hey, excuse me, is there any cosplay at your show? And I said, well, we've had some people that have dressed up in the past, but there's nothing really official yet, but we would love to add something. And she goes, okay, thanks. And then she walks back away. And like 3 minutes later, she comes back and she says, are you looking for someone to run the cosplay thing? I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, why? Did you know someone? She said, I might be willing to do that. I said, great. Welcome aboard. What's your name? And she said, I go under Bright Eyes Cosplay. And I said, that's great. Yeah, here's my contact information. If you want to do it, I'm totally open to it. And she said, awesome. And she walked back away. And she, that night I got an email from her that said, hey, I'd love to do this. And she's been in charge of our cosplay ever since. And like, that's exactly how this comes, is that we have someone that comes up with an idea and we just go, yeah, let's do it. And so like her big thing was that, So like there was Anime Milwaukee that was just in town, and Anime Milwaukee is an incredible show, and they have tons of people in cosplay, much more than what we do. And people at Anime Milwaukee are extraordinarily serious about their cosplay, much more than we are at our show, and that's great. It's really unique. But so she was like, I kind of want your show to be like the gateway to cosplay show, where we just have everybody that we just celebrate everybody's costumes, and we get as many people to do this as possible. And that's what we did, and it's kind of become its own thing. The cosplay contest has been one of the most popular parts of the show now for the last 10 years. So, and it's just a blast to see what people come up with and what they do.
I was like, yeah, Samus, you know.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
It was good, and of course, watching Luigi in the cart, the older gentleman, he was just driving around in it. The cute little baby. I forgot what was the baby wearing? The mother and the baby, or was it like a bee? It was something. It was all good.
Yeah, and it's just fun because, like I said, a lot of them are. We're getting to the point now that we've got some that are a lot more serious than when we started. But when we started, and the one that always sticks out to me. So the guy that was Santa this last year. He's a guy who is a pinball guy, and he was like, the first time that we did a cosplay contest, he was like, all right, whatever, I'll dress up for it, who knows. He's like the like crowd favorite every year because he goes all out and just does the funniest stuff. So this year he was Santa Claus. He's a older gentleman with a big white beard, and so like he was a garden gnome in one of the previous years. Like he's just been so many. He was like one of the Plants vs. Zombie characters that like came out and was like throwing balls.
Wow, that must be crazy.
Yeah, he's just hilarious and awesome, and like again, it's one of those things where we give people that venue, and it's amazing to see the creativity of humans.
That's great. Yes, I wonder what he's going to do this year. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
So, always something to look forward to, you know. Now, because like I said, I just know this. I was telling my son, is like, dude, I'm sure this year, the way it's sounding, you know, looking at it, it's going to be far more crazy than what it was last time. And I'm sure there'll be more people. And it's already planned out. We were already just, you know, months ago, we were like, yep, it's happening. Then I'm sure, I was just talking to one, who was it? Jay Jackhammer. He was there with the other guys. And I was like, hey, dude, you know, they're going to, I guess he didn't know they were, you know, you guys had just announced it, but I mean, weeks ago. He's like, they did. It's like, yeah, you guys are going to be there, right? It's like, of course you guys are going to be there. Or, you know, or the crew or so. And so, yeah, it's just everyone's talking about it. And some of the guys in a group that me and John Riggs are at, you know, just, you know, I mentioned it for a second and everyone starts talking about it and everyone gets involved. Oh, John Riggs, you already spoke to him. Yeah, I didn't know that even Metal Jesus was going there.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's cool. You know, I haven't met him yet. So all I know is that I have a few spots left in my head, or I'm gonna have to start using my Metroid cap because I have nothing on this one. So I'm gonna take that off and just because I think that guy's got the bottom. Oh no, I didn't got the bottom here, but yeah, I know you're gonna get a signature on here. I need one of you. I'm looking for you.
Deal.
You're gonna have to sign it.
Yeah, well, and I will tell you, it hasn't been announced yet, but it will be soon. We are doing something very big because it's the 30th anniversary of Mortal Kombat. So I believe that right now I'm waiting on graphics to come back to make a big announcement for that. We've got, so I don't know if you've looked at it recently. Let me see here. You can still see me, right? Because I'm a different one for a second. Okay, perfect. So one of the people that we've announced just recently that are coming are, so like I said, Kevin Bayless, Norman Caruso. If you have ever watched the Video Game Historian on YouTube, that's Norman, and so he's coming out. Brian Colin, who's the creator of Rampage and a number of other video games, is coming out. I mentioned Warren Davis before. I mentioned Kevin Conran before. Mm-hmm. This one's actually really interesting, and I'm not naming everybody. You can go to our website and you type in /meet after it to see everybody. But one of the really interesting ones that we have coming out is his name's Greg Peters, and so Greg Peters is an animator who he reached out to us. He was a character designer for a whole bunch of different stuff, most known for probably Pinky and the Brain. He's won 3 different Emmys, and so he's come to hang out and do stuff with us, and that's awesome. So
yeah, Pinky the Brain, Animaniacs, Rugrats.
So
Yeah,
wow. The chat, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, that's good. You know, just kind of looking at these. I have to review the rest of these guys. Like, holy crap!
Yeah, and there's more coming. I mean, it's crazy and it's awesome because there's so many of them that just I mean, so it's weird because like so many of these people are just kind of friends now. So one of the craziest ones. So Matt Isbell, who is from Monster Jam, comes out every year, and he's the one who actually runs our stage for us. He's a big gaming fan, and me and him have become really good friends. And so, like, it's funny because last weekend he was in Chicago announcing Monster Jam for the All-State Arena for like 3 nights in a row. And so, yeah, it's a fun thing, and it's crazy because, like I said, most of the people that are there, I've either like become really good friends with, or and like here's one that's crazy. So Fard Muhammad, that's on here, and I don't know that I have this on here. No, I kind of did this. So Fard is, if you know Nostalgia Critic at all on YouTube, Fard is the one that does his CG animations. And what's insane, Fard came to the Midwest Gaming Classic when it was known as JAGFest in 2001, because him and I have known each other since probably around 1995, because we were both huge Jaguar fans. And so we started interacting on, it was a website called Jaguar Sector 2 way back then. And so me and him hung out on Jaguar Sector 2 and chatted, and then he drove up from there, and he's been to our show on and off ever since. And it's funny because I was joking with him. I was like, how did I not know that you were doing that? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, well, next time that you're working on something like that, you have to tell me so that I can put you up as a special guest every time you come up. He's like, all right, well, let's bring out the whole crew. And so, yeah, their whole crew's coming up to do stuff. So it's going to be an exciting show with just so many different people and so many different things to see. And like I said, like we're just changing a lot of how we've ran things into what I think will be slightly better ways, and getting everybody that we can involved. And I can't wait.
I'm going to pull out some here that I grabbed for you. More comic dudes. Are they talking about was it a movie or a show?
Which one?
For the more comic guys, they got something just coming up. Where is it? Hold on.
For the show? You mean for the show that we're at? On what?
Yeah. You said they're going to present something.
So all that I can say right now is that it's the 30th anniversary of the release of Mortal Kombat the game. And so there's, let me put it this way. There's a good chance, so there's always been some Mortal Kombat involvement at the show. There's a very good chance that there will be more than some Mortal Kombat at this coming show.
I'm trying to download something really fast onto the photos. I know I was talking to when J. Jackhammer with this one. Mm-hmm. And then we had I was looking at that, and so just kind of these guys, I think this is part of the Mortal Kombat Legends. I think the movie that they filmed. Just kind of it's cool. You know, this guy's always got some really awesome fun things going on. Hold on, someone comment here. Hold on, 1 sec.
Yeah, I said hey before, so hey again.
Okay, see.
Dan Hauser's good people.
Oh yeah, what's up, man? Just saw that comment.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, just that's cool. Met some of these guys over there, and let's see. Yep, that's right. I had Brian. He had signed my hat, and then I had a picture. You know what? Brian Thompson was so awesome that I paid for. You know, you got the one where you take the picture. I took it with my son. You know, I paid for one, mm-hmm. But just for the heck of it, he printed out 2 copies and he gave one for my son. You know, it was really cool. He spent the time to, I will give you, you know, for one for each of you. You know, you paid only for one, and he had me. Oh, he talked to my son a little bit, gave him some like advice and stuff. He took the time to conversate. It was really cool. Really
well,
cool.
that's
you know,
that's to me kind of the real magic of the show, is that what we try to do as best as we can is present the people who have created the industry that we love as people, because that's what they are. And like, I mean, you probably understand this because of how you had said that your dad's worked for Six Flags for so long. There are so many people that when I worked at Six Flags were like, oh my God, it's the dream job. And like, you know, anybody that works at Six Flags is like some sort of like weird, like amazing person. And it's like, no, we're just all people. Like, you know, I mean, sure, I'm an amazing person, but you know, we're just all people, really. And like the thing is that so many conventions, and again, I'm not complaining about any of those conventions, but so many conventions that's like, hey, you know, here's the, like when I went to C2E2, I took a picture of their autograph area and it looked like a bowling alley because there was just a ton of lanes where there's people at the end. And I get it. It's a show where if you want to meet 20 different people and get autographs, you can, but it also kind of creates like a wall between you and them. Whereas we try to put people really out and just be like, hey, you know, go interact with them and do that and like find out more about them. And it's one of the things that I feel makes us unique, is because so much of these positions, like I've had people that are like, oh, well, I would love to make a video game, but you know, there's no way that I could ever get started. And then you go and I have a story where someone had made a game that they were just like showing a little bit on a laptop, and Eugene Jarvis, who's the creator of Defender and Robotron and Cruising USA and runs his own arcade company, happened to see it and he was like, oh my God, that looks amazing. I love it. You should totally like finish that. I would love to see the finished product and I would love to play the finished product. And it's like, okay, well, like he did it and he's telling you that you can do it. And that's like a kick that sometimes we all need, because the confidence of like, you know, well, could I actually pull that off? It seems like it's out of reach, but then you find people that are like, yeah. So, and thanks for the email, Dan. And I appreciate your kind words about the show. And yeah, like I said, the show is one of those unique things where you never know. There's 2 types of people. And so there's the people that really get the Midwest Gaming Classic and they love it. And if you find those people, they think it is the coolest thing ever. And that's great. And then there's people that honestly don't get it. And that's fine too. Because like I said, we can't make everybody happy. There are people that come to the show and are like, well, I swear to God, I had someone come to the show this last year that was like, I came on Friday and for the preview night, I was greatly disappointed because the back door to the building was open and I could hear trucks drive by when they were leaving. And I was like,
come on.
That's because it's preview night. They were like, well, there was also not everything was completely set up and they didn't let me shop at the vendors. I'm like, that's because it's preview night. That's why it's called preview night. That's why we limit the amount of people that come drastically, because it's preview night and you get to go in and play the games when there's not a billion people around. And like, I get it. We had someone that came to present something last year and they were like, the stage is just like set up in the middle of people. And like, you know, I wanted my own room. And then I figured that they literally said to me, I figured that I would be presenting in my own room and that you would have at least 100 people there to see me. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get you 100 people to like stop in a room to see something that they don't know about. If you started talking right here, you'd get a crowd, and they didn't want to do that. And we instead had other developers that would stand up and they'd be like, hey, you know, I'm going to talk about the game that I made. And suddenly there's a crowd of 50 people going, ooh, tell me more. And it was like, okay, well, if you don't want to work within the environment that we've made, that's fine. But that's also like, and I get it, because they were like, well, I did a presentation at Gen Con and it wasn't like this. And I'm like, yeah, we're not Gen Con. We're not that type of show. And that's okay. And Gen Con is a great show. Don't get me wrong. Gen Con is where Magic started, and I love Magic. And it's just, we're different. And then there's other groups that get it. So like the Batsu group that I mentioned before, they did this comedy show. And I was honestly terrified. And I've told them this, so I don't think they're going to mind me telling this story at all. I was terrified because I didn't get to speak with them too much. And actually, there's two groups that I can say that this worked out this way with, and I didn't get to speak with them as much as I should have before the show to kind of be like, dude, this is how exactly it works. And so they were like, oh yeah, we've been to New York Toy Fair, and so this will be the second major show that we're doing. I'm like, New York Toy Fair is like 100,000 people and like kind of completely different than how we operate. And I was like, oh, and so I walked by them and I was like, I hope that this was what you were expecting. And they pulled me aside. They're like, dude, this was better than what we thought it was going to be. This was exactly the type of show that we want to be involved with. They were like, we hated New York Comic Con or New York Toy Fair because it was so like buttoned up and we couldn't do stuff. And they were like, can we bring the show to you next year? And I was like, what? Like you? And they're like, yeah, can we like run the show multiple times at your show next year? Because we think that would be great. And like, we have this big club in Chicago and we tell people at the club in Chicago, but we could run the actual stage show here. And I was like, sure. And so like, we're going to run 3 shows with them, 2 during the regular show. And then during the after party, we have our after dark version of it, which will be the raunchy version of the show. And, it's unique that we can do stuff like that. And the other group that was that I had the same fear about was Tesla. Tesla, I have a Model 3, and so I had some work that needed to be done for it in town, and I took it to the place and I dropped it off, and I was sitting there, and one of the guys came out and he was talking with me for a minute, and he was like, hey, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I run this gaming convention in town. And I was like, actually, in 2019, we were supposed to have you guys come out, and then, you know, it didn't work out. So I'm curious, do you guys think you'd like to come out to this show? And they're like, yeah, and cool. And so we chatted, but I didn't know who was coming out. And so I wasn't able to tell them, like, this is what our show is like. And so the guy who ended up coming out, his name's Kevin. And I went over and talked with Kevin, and Kevin was just like, this was so much better than we expected. This was amazing. Can we bring more cars in spring? I'm like, yeah. They were like, can we do test drives in spring? I'm like, yeah. And so like the last time I don't even remember what happened last time. Oh, I know. One of my cameras in my car was acting up, so I had to schedule a service appointment. And so I got there and I texted Kevin and was like, hey, can we talk? And he came out and was just like, oh my God, this was amazing. And he's like, I have asked for the fastest car so that we can have test drives on the fastest car on the planet for you guys. And he was like, we'll do it where people come in, they can sign up for test drives, and we've got a whole like plan on how to do it. And he's just like, this is the exact type of show that we like. He said, we hate most of those button-up shows where like you're supposed to do stuff because people don't understand. He said, like, we love the cars at our show. They literally just let them be unlocked the whole time, even when they weren't there. And we're like, we want people to go get in them and try them and see what they're like. And they said, like, at regular shows, if you're not standing in the car, like with the door open saying like, get in, nobody does. And he said, at your show, people were crawling all over them. It was perfect. And we want that. And so they were like the first group to be like, let's talk about April. So that's just exciting when you get people like that get that understand it. And that's why so many people, I think, appreciate what it is. And quite frankly, that's why I still run it. It's like I said before, it's people like you and them who go, dude, this was great because of this, that make me go, oh my God, this really was great. Let me go work on this for another 20 hours or whatever to get stuff going and get that type of magic stuff. And man, when it comes together, it's unique, and I love it for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely everyone again collaborating together. Wanted to ask, what is your, let's say, have you had an ultimate moment or like a memorable experience that you had that you can right off the bat remember that just hit you a little bit more than the others, that, you know, it could be a favorite part of the MGC or just a big memorable moment, or just all of it is always?
So there's one that pops to mind right away. What I will say before I share this one is that every year I have like one moment that sticks out in my head. And it's always some interaction or something that happens at the show. This last year, honestly, it was that Matt, who I had mentioned before, and I had been working so hard and just in constant communication. And since he works for Monster Jam, his whole world was turned upside down by COVID, just like mine was. And so we had really just been communicating the whole time. And at the end of the show, we just kind of walked up to each other and hugged each other and just both wept for a few minutes. And it was just like, it worked. Like, we can still do this. And we were so glad that, like, we pulled it off, and it was clear that it wasn't a disaster. There was worry up until, there was worry until Saturday that we would open the doors and we would get 2,000 or 3,000 people and we would go belly up and there would be no way to save it. And so it was such a huge relief. And so, like, that's not really a fun moment. And I guess that it's kind of funny because the moment that I'm going to share is not necessarily a fun moment too, but it really put things into perspective, and I still remember it to this day. Eugene Jarvis, who I'd mentioned before, in what year would it have been? Probably 2016, 2015, something like that. We'd been at the Sheraton, and so we had outgrown the space of the Sheraton, so we set up this giant tent. And the giant tent that we set up had all the vendors in it because we literally outgrew the space of the hall, so that way we could put the vendors out there and then, you know, do whatever we could. And that year we just kept having stuff go wrong. And so it was raining and there was like streams coming through the tent under the vendors. And my mom, bless her heart, was helping us with tickets in the morning. And she was being extraordinarily nice to people who had pre-bought their tickets. So she was chatting with everybody for like 2 to 3 minutes as she would scan their tickets. And so the pre-sale tickets, which are supposed to be like, you get in real quick, that's supposed to be the benefit of pre-selling, that line was sticking out the door like 40 feet into the rain. Whereas if you brought money, the people with money were walking in, paying their money and just going right in. And so there were people, and then at the same time, my wife was texting me, oh my God, should I be deleting all these negative comments that we're getting on YouTube or on Facebook right now? And I was just, and at the same time, I was off site for a moment because I had tried being cute with our change that year. So I was like, oh, we won't need that much change. We'll be okay. And then we ran out of change by like 20 minutes in. So I was literally sprinting to the bank, which was across the parking lot, but further than I thought. So it was like a 3/4 of a mile sprint that I thought was going to be like 100 feet. I should have driven. I did not. So all of this happened at once, and it was just disaster after disaster. And I got back and I quickly helped solve the ticket problem. And right after I solved the ticket problem, someone says to me, hey, Dan, Eugene's here and he's wondering where he's supposed to go. And I turned and Eugene goes, Dan Lucen, how's it going? And I'm bad at lying and covering emotions, and I just tend to not do it. And so I'm like, hey, Eugene. And he goes, oh my God, what's wrong? And I was like, it's just like everything's kind of going wrong. And I kind of described some of the stuff to him. And you're cool with adult language on your show, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. Just making sure. So we're walking through the hall and he's like, tell me about it. So I'm telling him all that stuff that had happened. And he said, I totally know the situation. And he said, Dan, this is like when I release an arcade game. I will sit there and during the release, I'm going to notice all the little graphical issues. And I'm like, God, we should have cleaned that up. Or that doesn't quite look right. Or, oh, the turn in this racetrack is just a little bit off of the angle that it should have been at. And he said, and what I've come to realize in my life is that's because I'm so close to it that I see all the details. But people don't show up just looking at the details. They see the whole picture. And he said, take a step back, Dan. This is fucking awesome. And I was like, and like, we're not being a family show. So him doing that, and this was in the middle of a whole bunch of people. And I was just, and he shouted it. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, seriously, this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite conventions that I get to go to, because he said so many of my conventions that I go to are people presenting games to people that aren't really gamers. And he said here, everybody's excited to see what's coming and see what's going on. And everybody is excited to see all the different stuff. And so don't worry about those little details. He said those people that were angry that they didn't get in right away, they're now in and having a time of their lives. Those people the issue with the change, you already solved that. It's over. Who cares? Take a look around. This is amazing. This is great. You're doing wonderful. Look at the whole picture. And it made me take a step back. And ever since then, I've been much better at doing that. And then the actual greatest moment, though, was Eugene was the second greatest moment because after I got him to the place that he was speaking, my wife texted me and was like, "Meet me in the room ASAP." And I was like, "Uh-oh, okay." And so I went up to the room, and she opens up the window, so we're looking at the tent. And I was like, "Okay, this is where she's going to be. Like, see that tent? You did that. This is okay," because she knew that I was like losing it at this point too. And so she opens up the window and she goes, "Come here." And I said, "Okay." And that was when she told me that we were having our second child. And I was like, "Okay, none of this, like, rain doesn't matter. None of this matters. This is awesome. My day's great. Let's go." And Eugene
Yeah.
show too. So that is the memory that sticks out at me more than anything else, because and it
Beautiful.
totally changed my attitude to the show that year. That show was at the point that I was at before Eugene did that. I was like ready to just be like, dude, like this is just terrible. And I don't think that I would have been able to live in the moment with my wife and be as excited as I was if Eugene hadn't made me change my perspective before that of like, you know, the show matters, but the show is doing great for what it is, and instead take a step back and look at like the whole picture, and then getting reminded of the whole picture of also being family and like all of that right afterwards. So yeah, that is the Midwest Gaming Classic memory that takes the cake out of everything. So yeah.
That was very nice, very beautiful for that. You know, just everything just folded. Everything was fine. You're gonna be okay. Everything, you know, awesome. Let's get towards let's say towards the end of the streams. Wow, they didn't realize we're about 2 hours and a half. Dang, it's cool.
Yeah, I
You-
was not expecting to stay this long, but I've been having so much fun. I swear to God. So thank you. Like seriously, if you want to be my shrink like once a week, we could set up a time.
yeah, just sit down, just talk.
Yeah, well, like I said,
It's good to
it's legit
let out.
cathartic to have a conversation, like thinking about all of that type of stuff, because so much of right now has been, and like I'm not trying to whine at all, but so much of just the show the last 24 months, it's just been hell, because it's like we shut down, and after we shut down, there was this period where people were asking me like every day, like, "Oh, so like I bought tickets, when is my refund coming out?" I don't know yet. As soon as I can get money, but I've asked for all these loans and none of them have come in yet. And then like a week later, "Okay, it's been a week. Now can you tell me?" I don't know yet. It's the same. It was like Groundhog Day for like freaking 3 months. And then like that got by. And then it was like, okay, well, we need to plan. We can't really plan, but we need to find money, but we don't like what do we put money into? And there was just so much of that. And like even so after November, like November went off really well, but November was so difficult because it wasn't really until like August that we could really start planning for November. And so that show was
Wow.
put together so fast because everybody was like, "Well, we need to wait until we see what COVID's like." I was like, "Okay." And then we had 3 months, and I was like, "Oh my God, like it is so hard to organize a show like this and get everything together in 3 months." And that one was over, and it was like, okay, it's still crazy that we're doing one 6 months later, but at least we've got 6 months. And then Omicron rose, and then everybody was like, "Nope, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to set up anything because your show is probably not going to happen." And like the health experts that we had talked to and stuff were all like, "Oh no, your show's going to be fine by then." But we were like, well, we don't know. And so until just recently, like around probably 2 to 3 weeks ago, was the time that suddenly everybody went from being like, I don't really want to plan, not really sure what to get. Everybody was like, yes. And so now my inbox is just constantly flooded with different things. And I have a to-do list. I need to figure out where I put it. I have a to-do list that's on a legal pad that's like 4 pages long right now. I'm like, I don't know how to get through all of this. And so, like I said, there's times that I just like sit down and look at the list. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea which one I should do next, because like I need to contact this guy and I need to figure out the space for this. I need to do that. I need to do this. And like, this is great because it allows me to remember the end goal, if that makes sense, and go like, yeah, this is what it's going to end up as. And it's worth it for all the craziness.
It is definitely all the hard work that you put to it. I think you got a lot more time this time, right? As you got plenty of time. Like the other time was August, and right away you have straight to November.
It's ended up being compressed to around a 3-month period, but again, because like I said, Omicron made it so that people weren't ready to start talking until like February. So we've got February, March, and April that we've got. So it's like 3 months again. But the good news about it is that, number one, we kind of already did this. So we kind of know, like, okay, we can pull this off this quickly. And then the other part of it is that it's been easier this time around to be able to, I guess one of the things that kept going on in the background was that we kept trying to figure out the space with the Wisconsin Center. And by doing that, it allowed us to have some of the stuff that we wouldn't necessarily have right away done. So like we have a map that honestly should be up on the website any day now that is like, this is the general layout of what the show is going to look like. And usually we don't get that general layout of what the show is going to look like until like 2 or 3 weeks before, but like that's done. And like, I mean, this is lame and not exciting to anybody else, but like usually Goat Store taxes, which is Goat Store underwrites Midwest Gaming Classic, we're the same company. Goat Store taxes are usually done like right before the show, which is always crazy. And this year it was like, well, it's January, might as well get taxes done since no one else wants to do anything. So like I got taxes done, and like that creates a much lower level of stress for the most part now. And so now it's just a matter of, like I said, trying to catch up with everything possible and really getting back to everybody and just doing all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Let's see real quick. Make sure I had everything covered here. I think we did talk this. Anything. Yeah, we did. Brittany Hudson. I was going to ask you, but you told me all about that. That's all good. Memorable moments, games, old school gamer. Everything seems on. You do have lastly, you have stuff on Twitch.
Yeah. So I guess anybody that wants to follow us that doesn't know about us already, the couple ways that you can do that. Number one, we're active on Facebook under MGC Gaming. We are also active on Instagram under @Midwest_Gaming_Classic. And we have a Twitch channel where I give show updates once a week on Twitch on Mondays. We do a show called Gamer Zone. Matt sometimes joins me for that. It's at 9:30. And then we've got other shows throughout the week. So we've got on Sundays, there's a guy that repairs pinball machines, Mark, and you can check out that. There's on Wednesdays, there's a guy, the Gin Master, who plays retro games and talks about them. And then on Thursdays, we actually play the panels from the show in the past. And so if you missed a panel that you want to see, that's a place that you can go to do that. And yeah, there's a number of really awesome stuff like that people can go and check out. And we encourage them to do that. The other thing too is if you head to our website, you can click on join our mailing list on the very bottom of the page. And that is another way that we do not spam you with tons of stuff, but we'll keep you up to date with what's going on with the show. And anything that people can do is super appreciated. Like I said, we're a small independent show. We're not a corporate show. We're not driven by anybody. But if you are a giant corporate company and you hear this and you want to come out to the show, get in touch. We'd be happy to have you. But the goal of it is to make sure that we've got everybody that can be represented in some way, and we're going to fight for that no matter what we're doing. And so anything that anybody can do, like we've had people that have subscribed to us on Twitch using their Amazon Prime accounts, which actually helps because we had to take out loans to survive right now. And so it's interesting and it's good, and we do this because of everybody. And so the more people that we get in touch with, the better it is and the better everything goes. So thank you all. And again, thank you for spreading the word for this. If it wasn't for people like you that loved it, I sure as hell wouldn't be doing this anymore. I would have I've told people before, and it's so true, I could make a lot more money if I had like picked up a second job at like McDonald's or kept my job at Chuck E. Cheese and done that with my spare time. And it's not about the money, it's about the people, and finding people like yourself who are passionate about it and want to spread the word is exactly why we do this. So thanks. If it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you for making the Midwest Gaming Classic.
And thank you for everything for the entire team. You know, just like our buddy had mentioned, just was it our retro station? Yeah, I think it was him. Yeah, just everything you guys do to put together for yourselves, co-founder, and all those who over the years. What is it? What are we? What are you guys? The 20 years, 21 years?
It's 21. It's our 21st anniversary, but because we missed one show, I believe this is technically the 20th show.
So 20th show and many more to come. You know, because everything's looking amazing and a lot of good stuff coming soon. Anything you mentioned is in the description in the video. I'll make sure to update anything I missed. But other than that, you will find all the great information. And even if you want to be Dan Lucent's friend, you find him on Facebook as well.
Yep,
he's a great guy. You know, and again, you know, I wish we could, we could stay longer. I think what time is it? We're at oh wow, it's like
12, drive my kid to camp in like 6 hours, so we should probably go.
Oh,
it's all good.
So
it's all
either
good.
way,
I just have to drive him to where he's getting taken to camp, so it's all good.
Get some
like
sleep.
I said, it's been energizing. I'm going to be wired for a little bit and happy, and I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll drag butt to take him to camp, and then I'll drag butt home, and then I'll take another nap, and I'll be super happy, and I'll wake up and I'll do a ton of work. So yeah. And by the way, anybody who wants to come, if you buy your ticket right now at MidwestGamingClassic.com, it is a forever ticket. So what that means is that if you can't come this year for any reason, your ticket will be good for next year or the year after or the year after for any like ticket. It's good until redeemed, like a forever stamp. And so if you've got the means to purchase your ticket or tickets early, we would really appreciate that, because the way that I always tell people is that we watch ticket sales to figure out how to correctly size the event. And so if ticket sales are doing well, we add more stuff to the show. And if they're not, well, then we don't. And so so far so good, but you know, anybody that can help by purchasing a ticket, we would appreciate that.
That is amazing. Forever ticket, so that's always awesome. So I saw that too. It's great feature to have. So
yeah, just in case.
Just in case, you know, that's actually what people need. You know, let's say if I'm gonna come this, you know, get my ticket, which I will, and then all of a sudden I can't I can just save for next year. You know, it's fine.
Yep,
so.
exactly.
All right. So that being said, I want to thank everyone who came on, came to watch, and those who will be seeing this later, because I will be advertising this video more on my social media. So either way, it's been a great time, great show, and I will be ending. Hold on, with the intro, which will be the outro. It'll be just again the Chronoz song, and then followed by a short clip to get you excited for the Midwest Gaming Classic. This is myself, Chronoz. Anything lastly you want to add before we head out?
I don't think so. Thank you all. And again, thank you for helping make this show possible.
All right. Thank you. And we will see you guys next time. This is myself, Chronoz, and Dan Lucent. We were talking about the Midwest Gaming Classic 2022. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Master Sword Music.
TJ the Gamer. Yeah, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, yeah, this the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus got one of the best cast that you have ever seen. You really missing out if you haven't heard that this show here to stay. So go pass the word, old school or new school. Check us out on YouTube. It don't matter what you like, we got something for you. Just one more thing to say before I start to close. Shout out to my homies at the Chronoz Show. The Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh, that's the Chronoz Show. Games, music, movie, TV, we got what you need. Plus the gamers round, ooh.
Thunder, 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 Thundercats! Ho!
When you decide to come out to this type of function, this type of experience, this type of gathering, Marvel phenomenon, there is only one event to attend, the MidWest Gaming Classic, where you and the games are one. Gaming Classic. It's not just child's play.